Paul Radio, where we interview local and international legends, bringing you stories from the road, life experiences, and future artist endeavors. Totem Paul Radio. On this month's cast, we've got Craig Goldy, guitar player for Cutt, Giuffria, and the late great Ronnie James Dio. Welcome to Totem Paul Radio.
Thanks again for the time, man. I love this. This is exciting. I'm pumped about next month. I can't shut up about it. I'm like, everybody comes in the store. I'm like, it hadn't been announced yet, but so you know, Craig's going to be here. And so everyone is very excited about it.
I'm super excited because it's been a long time since I've been able to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And for it to be the first one with you is really cool.
Yeah.
Because we've become such good friends in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
You know, and then I also have an invested interest in helping you because you have that talent, you've got the look, you've got the mind, you've got the heart and the soul, and you've got what it takes, you know, and so you're my special project too.
Yeah. You got the special part right. Definitely. All right. If my hair looks good, gosh, why is it receding on that side? Can I borrow some of your gray and put it right here? That'll work. That'll work.
I can't believe it. They're supposed to say that it's your mother's father.
Mm-hmm.
My mother's father had a full head of hair until, you know, he passed away, and I'm not quite sure. Maybe my mother's father isn't my mother's father. I don't know.
Maybe there's some stuff we ought to know about. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get started. Craig Goldy is here today, and I am so excited to get to talk to him and interview him because I won't give him a huge ego rub right now, but obviously huge influence on me growing up because he was singing for my favorite singer of all time and probably most everybody's as far as metal goes, Ronnie James Dio. So his background was with Cutt and Giuffria. And Craig, what other bands did you play with? You've been in so many different projects. What are some of the other bands that you played with?
Notably, I guess, would be afterwards. Like there's a lot of people. I'll notice that some comments in YouTube to some of the Dream Evil album songs. Mm-hmm. They'll say, "What have you been doing lately?" And then I'll kind of let them know about Resurrection Kings with Vinny Appice and Chaz West and Sean McNabb, and then Dream Child with Rudy Sarzo and Simon Wright, and the keyboard player and second guitarist from Michael Schenker, Wayne Findlay, and then the surprise vocalist out of Argentina called Diego Valdez, who about 10 years ago one of his friends sent me an MP3 of a cover of the song Push that me and Ronnie wrote for the album Killing the Dragon. Yeah. And it was from a band called Helker. So I put it on, and it was chilling because it sounded like Ronnie had covered his own song. Oh. That's how close it was. Yeah. And I got a hold of him and said, "Hey, dude, you know, how do I get a hold of your buddy who just sang this song?" So he hooked us up. I told him, you know, how great he was, and it's too soon because it was really close to after Ronnie's passing, and that just would have been a big slap in the face.
Right.
So we waited almost 10 years and stayed friends. And then one day I'm talking to the president of Frontiers Records, and I just happened to make him. We were talking about another project, the Isley Goldy thing, with me and Dave Isley from Giuffria did an album on Frontiers together, and so we were talking about that. Then I just happened to make a comment in passing about how when I need to go out, like when I would go out with Joe Lynn Turner, I would have to kind of brush up on my Joe Lynn Turner era Rainbow songs.
Right.
Because those are the ones I knew and loved, but I didn't know them as much as the Ronnie James Dio Rainbow era. We both know why, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I love Joe Lynn Turner. He's become a great friend too, and what a great dream come true that was. But as I'd use YouTube for the brush up because I felt okay doing that because I already bought the vinyl, the 8-track, the cassette, the CD, and they all went missing as I would move from place to place. And so, you know, I felt entitled to go ahead and use YouTube and use the song for free. Everybody listening. Anyways, and so I noticed on almost every single one of them, the comment was, they don't make music like that anymore.
Right.
And so I made a comment to that to Serafino, and he, the president of Frontiers, and he goes, "Can you?" I go, "Well, yeah." He goes, "Can you get me Rudy Sarzo?" I said, "Yeah." Luckily, he was available and interested. I didn't know. I just said, "Yeah,"
Yeah.
"Can you get me Simon Wright?" I said, "Yeah." Luckily, he was available and interested. He goes, "Who would you have write?" And I talked to him about Wayne Finley from Michael Schenker. Me and Jeff Pilson write together. Me and Doogie White, who was in Rainbow, we write really good together. The in-house producer at the time, Alessandro Del Vecchio, him and I write really good together. And he goes, "Well, who would you have sing?" So I sent him the MP3 that was sent to me 10 years prior. And I woke up the next morning with a record deal in my email inbox.
Wow, that's really cool.
To do an album with Rudy Sarzo, I mean, come on, So those are the projects that especially the first Resurrection Kings album. There's two of those. There's a few songs on the Isley Goldy album that are really good. But the first Resurrection Kings album was the very first time, because I can draw and paint like a photograph, they allowed me to record the way I wanted to record. And I did some writing on that album as well. And so some of the writing is real special because it was kind of like I was left at my own, just by myself. And then I would submit. And then they would either dig it or they wouldn't. So I learned how to paint with my guitar.
Yeah. That's really cool.
That's another story too.
Yeah. Your artwork is amazing. You were gracious enough to send me some of your artwork. I couldn't believe it. Like nobody knows it. You're like, that could have been your other calling, if you will. Obviously, it wasn't your first calling, but my God, you're talented. And it's two different. I mean, there's so many different styles that you approach in your art. Even It looked like they were two different artists. It wasn't the same painting style, at least.
Yes. Thank you that's the first time anybody's ever said that, because that has a lot to do with my music too. Because I do have a lot of favorite bands. But, at one point in time, the only band I would ever listen to was Deep Purple or Rainbow. And that was it. People wouldn't want to come over to my house for after parties because they weren't allowed to play AC/DC and Led Zeppelin. Really, they had to listen to Rainbow and Deep Purple,
Yeah,
And it wasn't as Nazi as it sounds, but it was like, after a while I'd let them play that stuff. But at first, because I was so narrow-minded. And then I was very narrow-minded with my art too, because Mad Magazine, this artist Mort Drucker, if you go back into the old Mad Magazine, where he would do the satires on movies, the way that man drew, the detail, that's what I wanted to be like. And then eventually I got into Frank Frazetta, who did, I think it was the Death Dealer was the painting that they used for the 38 Special album. Which doesn't really coincide with the way they sound, but if people look for Frank Frazetta, Death Dealer, it's just like, and then Mad Magazine, Mort Drucker, they're two different worlds. So that's where it kind of came from, and then liking Ronnie James Dio era and Joe Lynn Turner era, they're two different bands. So eventually my mind started to say, I had to accept this because it's good.
It's interesting. I'll push back a little bit on the narrow-minded thing because I knew what I liked, in the mid-'80s too, and everything else sucked. Yes, you aren't being open musically, but at the same time, you know what you like.
That's right.
It's like going to the restaurant and you know what you want. I'll try something later when I get tired of this, And
I do that too. I always order the same thing when I go to a restaurant. Right. I said, okay, I'll try that next time, and I never do.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, and eventually, Whitesnake, dear Lord, and I was in a band it was all instrumental. We were doing instrumental songs. These guys loved Genesis, and I was like, oh, okay, and then Journey, Foreigner. I never really would listen to Journey and Foreigner and Genesis on my own, or even Whitesnake, because it was just, I guess I felt like disloyal if I wasn't listening to Rainbow and Deep Purple only. But that was really the only thing, because when I was a kid, I would sit in front of the radio and search for what I thought was my favorite. I thought there was such a thing as one favorite genre. So I listened to jazz and I thought, this is really cool. But eventually I was like, So I changed the channel, blues. Okay, here we go. This is it. And then after a while, then classical. Okay, classical. Okay, that's it. This is it. Then rock. All right, forget everybody else. Then R&B. And I would have to switch back and forth until the Deep Purple Burn album came out. That was my first introduction to Deep Purple. Okay. So you got Glenn Hughes, who sounds like a white Stevie Wonder,
right?
And has some really funky, cool bass lines. You got Ian Pace, who's jazz based. You got John Lord, who's classical based. You got David Coverdale, who's that gruff bluesy tone, and then you got Richie Blackmore, who's from a totally different planet. And it was a combination of all my favorite things rolled up into one band, and they only did 2 albums. Yeah. And then he left. I'm like, and my world was just, and then disco's coming in. I'm like, what the hell just happened? Mm-hmm. And then Rainbow came out, and I'll never forget it. I think I tell that story. Yeah, I told that story in the Dreamers Will Never Die documentary, where that Deep Purple was my favorite band, and I was just heartbroken when Deep Purple broke up until I heard Man on the Silver Mountain. Me and a friend of mine were in his car, and we were talking about getting a band together, and Man on the Silver Mountain came on the radio, and I was like, who the hell is that? And then from that day on, it was like, okay, this guy's my favorite singer, but he's not in Deep Purple. So how do I have a favorite band without Ronnie James Dio? Well, at least he's got, Richie Blackmore's my favorite guitar player. So once, there was a lot of great stuff on that first one, but after Rainbow Rising, it was like, this is it. This is the sound, man. Ronnie James Dio and Richie Blackmore.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I was narrow-minded again for a while.
Right. Yeah. You like what you like. It's steak. Why go get McDonald's when you can have steak? That's how I've always looked at music. Why settle for less? It's like, well, I can get the generic version.
I can see the comment section now.
How bold of you to say that. But I don't care about the comments because I know what I like. So what they always say, it doesn't matter. Your opinion's the right opinion. So, I have been wrong on occasion. Anyways, it's not about me, but I've been wrong. I've heard bands. I'm like, man, I didn't listen to that band because the people told me to listen to them were the same ones that like X, Y, and Z bands. So they've got bad taste. I'm not going to listen to them. Right, and then before you know it, I'm listening to Creed on purpose. I'm going, and I'm not dragging, but I'm not making digs at them, but I didn't want to listen to them because everyone that listened to them told me I should listen to them. They like these other bands. And then you're forced, you hear them on the radio and you're like, that's a good song. Wow. I have to say, I like this band. I love the way they were.
Yeah. I understand the struggle. It's an internal struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what good music does. I mean, that's why even country music, even hip hop they've got some great artists that you can't deny how good they are. And so, I make jokes about country music all the time, but the honest truth is, my goodness, listen to the guitar players that are out there and some of the singers that truly do sing from the heart.
Yeah, and there was an era where the country music sound was basically the 80s rock music.
That's right. Yeah.
Put to a country western sounding vocalist. And it was like, that was cool. I mean, no, you're right. My dad loved country music. He was a police officer, and boy, that man was, he never said a word. He was special forces back then called Green Berets. Mm-hmm. He was badass. He came from special forces and then he was a police officer, then he was a vice squad, and he was a badass, and you don't say anything or do anything without thinking about it 4,000 or 5,000 times before you make a move.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And he loved country music, but he also liked Creedence Clearwater Revival. And what was weird is that I did too. There was a couple of songs that I liked of theirs. So him and I actually had something in common.
Yeah.
It was bizarre, you know, that I started to realize I have to admit whatever is good is good.
Right. That's exactly right.
Regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
And I thought I was doing that in my search about jazz, you know, classical, R&B, rock, and blues. But those aren't the only genres, especially now. There's so many genres split off ever since the Seattle sound came in. You know, God bless them, but, you know, the record companies, they tossed us aside for like almost 10 years. We were thrown away in the trash for the latest trend. You know, unless you were like Aerosmith, Ozzy Osbourne, AC/DC, ZZ Top, Van Halen, Black Sabbath, you know, those guys stayed on top. That's a whole other story too. And I learned why and how that was. And so there's warning signs of things about ready to happen again like that I like to teach my students. So that way they know, because I didn't know the warning signs. I could have not been taken out had I been taught the warning signs of when that was about to happen and why. That's another story.
Right. And we're going to, let's get to that, because that's a very interesting story. We've talked about that before. And I know that music, what I learned in music appreciation is that it's a rebellion. Each generation's a rebellion against the last. And so history is repeating itself, and it's going to repeat itself again. And so that would be great for us to discuss that. Back up, start from the beginning with you real quick. What was when did you first pick up the guitar? What motivated you to start?
The Burn album. It was when I was 13. I was drawing, and everybody thought I was supposed to be an artist, even myself. But I just couldn't picture the lifestyle of standing there in a little room full of easels and painting. It sounds great now.
Yeah. It's relaxing.
Yeah, I even tried it once. There was a company called Famous Frames where you would do just a ton of art, you know, whether it's like a Marlboro ad. I have like these Marlboro ads and all this stuff that I would draw. And then that would be in my portfolio, which would be my account for Famous Frames. So when someone was looking for an artist for their advertising campaign, they would go through Famous Frames accounts and choose an artist, and then you were paid to go and do it. And the guy who ran the place, him and I got along really good, and I was like one of his favorites, but it gave me migraines. And it was like living with a daily migraine every single day, because I knew deep down inside that wasn't my ultimate calling. I was acting outside of it. I was going against the grain, even though I was good at it. Just because I was good at it didn't necessarily mean that that's what I was supposed to make my living as number one.
Right.
Because once it became secondary and showed me, because when I would draw, like, let's say if I was going to draw you, we'll start from there. If I were to draw you and you were sitting in the room with me, the first thing I would ask you is to, you know, get comfortable and then pick a position and then stay still. Don't move. And then I would be looking at a blank piece of paper. So I would look at your face, study your face. I always start with the nose because that's the center of the face. So the first thing I would do is come on now. Come on, man.
The first thing you do is go get a bigger piece of paper.
Yeah, I do that with everybody. Knock it off. I do that with everybody.
Oh my gosh.
But you got a great look. I'm telling you, man. You've got what it takes. You're my special project on the side. I'm telling you. Anyways, so I'd have to look up, look down, look up, look down, look up, look down. And all those times of doing that throughout the years was exactly what helped me when I had to learn Ritchie Blackmore solos via the vinyl. Right. Pick up the needle, find something, put it down, pick it up, put it down. Or if I would record it on cassette, stop, rewind, play, stop, rewind, play. So that whole thing about, okay, now how do I, you know, because if I draw you perfectly, but your eyes are just like maybe a milli-inch further away from each other, it's not going to look like you.
Right. Yeah.
If the distance between the bottom of your nose and the top of your lip is too far, even by milli-inches, it's not going to look like you. It has to be exact.
Yeah.
And so by doing that for so many years, as a kid, they loved it. At Thanksgiving, I would make these character drawings of all my relatives. So everybody wanted one. So that's what I had to do. Look, draw, look, draw, look, draw. So when I was trying to, learn Ritchie Blackmore solos, that was already kind of ingrained in me. Listen, find it, listen, find it, listen, find it. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me beyond working with Ronnie James Dio was being able to tell that similar story to Ritchie Blackmore face to face.
Yeah, that is
at the end of the Giuffria tour, because I was doing a thing where I would mute the strings with my right hand and then play with my left, right. And it was all hammer-ons and pull-offs. So I could do something that most people had to do with two hands, but I could do it with one hand. So that was supposed to be impressive, and some people got impressed. And so at the end of the tour, Ritchie was walking towards me, and I was walking towards him in the Coliseum hallway, and he just stopped me. He says, "You have to show me how you do that. You have to show me how you do that." I'm thinking, wow, after all these years of me trying to learn Ritchie Blackmore solos, here's Ritchie Blackmore asking me how to show him how I do something. And I ran and hid in the dressing room because I couldn't handle it. My little, 19-year-old brain couldn't handle that, And so then something told me, "You idiot, there was Ritchie Blackmore talking to you." So I did exactly what Ronnie told me not to do, is go to his private dressing room. He told me, "Don't do that," Right. So I knocked on the door, and he answered. And I said, "Ritchie, I've admired you, for so many years." And his eyes rolled like this. I thought, oh, this must be why Ronnie told me not to do this.
Right.
It was because George Lynch and guys like that before, he also kept them from doing their guitar solos while on tour. And those guys would come to his dressing room and say, "I idolized you for years." And they would flip him off and say the words F you and walk away. So he was rolling his eyes, go, "Here we go again." Now I know afterwards, but I didn't know then. So I just said, "You're the best and you always will be. I don't care who comes along with this thing that I was doing or whoever, you're the best and you always will be. No hard feelings." And I put my hand out to shake his hand. He shook my hand. He says, "Come on inside."
Oh, wow.
And then we had this conversation and an interaction that was just, it was mind-blowing, because that's Ritchie Blackmore, and it was really cool.
Totem Paul Guitars is located downtown Neosho, Missouri on the historic square. We offer new and used gear for the everyday musician. We buy, sell, and trade. We're only open on Fridays and Saturdays 10 to 5, but we can also be reached for an appointment. Come check us out. Our inventory is constantly changing, and you can also look us up on Reverb or eBay. 124 East Spring Street, downtown Neosho, Missouri. Totem Paul Guitars. We don't just sell guitars. We deliver happiness.
I for the sake of the listeners that aren't guitar players, I've heard that story before. Where, can you imagine, today as a guitar player, you can get on YouTube, you can see the guy playing it live. You can kind of dissect what they're doing. You can slow it down and keep the pitch correct and learn
exactly.
note for note. But I think Jake E. Lee had mentioned the same thing that you did, that he had to figure solos out. I can't imagine doing that with an album. Cassettes, one thing, but with an album, you're having to go and put it. You don't know where you're landing, and you're listening. You're doing one note at a time. So you're listening. I already got that note. I got to get the next. Oh, I missed it. And that's so. That must have developed your ear and patience on top of that, wouldn't you say?
Well, yes. I mean, I have the patience of 1,000 wise men. Thank you, God. But yes, it was just the drive. It was the drive. And
what did you do?
I have to learn this. It wasn't that I want to learn this. I have to. I won't be able to, I rarely slept anyways. My parents would often find me sleeping at the dinner table drawing, or in my room, with the turntable going around, and the album is done, my headphones, and they would have to, turn things off. But it was just the drive. It was the drive. And many things that I found that I want to be able to teach people came from that, by drive, to better myself and get better, which then I would find, because I've got a really good memory. My grandfather had a photographic memory. And I think there's another term for, that comes from the Big Bang. Sheldon from the Big Bang has a different kind of memory, but he remembers things not by sight, just by the experience alone. I have a little bit of that too, meaning that once I get over the hump and I get from A to Z, I remember every single obstacle. So that becomes really good for me when I become a teacher, when I try to teach my students, because I remember every single hump, every single step of the way. And what that did was allow me to create like obtainable goals for them. I would break it down. This is my journey from A to Z. This is what I did. So if you want to get to Z and you're at A, these are the steps that I guarantee you will get you to Z, because I did. And I sucked when I almost quit.
Well, I can relate with that. It was not easy for me at all. I quit 6-7 times. I'm like, didn't have a teacher, just my stepdad, and he was a bass player. So he's speaking, he's like, well, you just need to learn your chords. I'm like, I don't want to learn cowboy chords. I want to play the fast dweedly dweedly thing up here. And he's like, no, Shane, you got to, and I wouldn't listen to him. And so it was very difficult for me. So yeah, I quit several times, but there was a breaking point where I said, I'm going to learn this guitar no matter what. There was a couple curse words that were in that sentence too that I used, but I'm going to learn it. I'm going to learn if it kills me, because I want to do what that guy on TV is doing.
Right. And I've heard you play.
Let's not go there.
So I can back you up. No, come on, man. I sent you a backing track for you to play to.
Yeah.
And what you sent me, there was a few melody lines and things that you did that I was jealous of, that I thought, wow, why didn't I think of that? It was my backing track.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I'm the one who's supposed to come up with the best stuff.
You can use that, I'm telling you.
Then I teach you guys it. You don't teach me something.
Well, I did still this thing. I've done this before we were talking, and because again, I think, behind me, I made sure to put that behind.
Oh yeah.
That's the cap off the Dream Evil tour. I think the speakers are dated 1987. I need to pop them back open and check, but so that would be Dream Evil's tour. Did you record that album in 86 or 87?
I believe it was 87, because I joined in 86. And did the second leg of the Sacred Heart tour.
Right, which is that video in the bottom corner.
Right.
If anybody wants to just get on YouTube and watch that guitar solo, and you don't know who Craig Goldy is, oh my God, that's got to make you feel good to have that recorded. I mean, there's stuff all over the place playing, but
the first time it came out, it didn't have it.
Really?
The time they released that's Finding the Sacred Heart in Philadelphia, it had all the solos deleted, and then it was a re-release, and then it had the solo in it. And I'll never forget it, because we were on tour with Uli Roth and Vinnie Moore, and we were doing a thing with me and Vinny Appice, and at the time the late great Elliot Rubinson, who owned Dean Guitars and DW Drums and played bass for Uli Roth and Michael Schenker. He's a great bass player, great guy. We had a band called Black Knights Rising. So we were on tour with, I forget what they called it, G3 or something like that. And so the bass player would play with Uli Roth after us, because he was the headliner. So one day, for some reason, Vinny just pops up that solo from that concert. And at that exact moment, Uli Roth walks in. And it's not like he was a jerk to me or anything, but, he was just kind of standoffish a little bit, And I just thought, okay, that's cool. He's a legend. I'm not. I'm good with that. He's being nice to me. What do I care? Yeah. He goes, who's that? And Vinny goes, "That's Craig." And he goes, "What?" And from that day on, he called me Maestro.
Wow.
And he started, and him and I had a completely different connection and conversation and friendship after that.
Yeah.
You know, not that I'm trying to grow a third arm to pat myself on the back with, because that solo was really just me trying to come up with a bunch of stuff, because Eddie Van Halen came in and changed everything.
Right.
So what do I have to offer that he didn't do? And there's a couple of things, the two-handed things that later on I learned that Stanley Jordan was doing, you know, the quiet little classical piece. You know, I thought it was, you know, but I was doing that before I even left San Diego back in 1983. I was doing that way before Stanley Jordan.
Right,
Yep.
and it's on that video. I do remember you doing that. You pull the distortion back, and you're doing like a classical thing. You run the bass line and a melody. It's just, it's a great solo. The other thing I'll let everybody know is you were definitely an innovator. And again, I'm stroking your ego here.
I was trying.
Yeah, that people. There's a product that they have now that all these guys that play guitar. You know, when they do a lot of, I'm not making fun of them, but like the Nintendo guitar sound, where they're not, you know, where they're just, there's really not a lot of picking, a lot of legato and stuff like that. And to prevent them from having any kind of sustained fallback on it, there is a little thing that they wrap around the head, or near the headstock, near the nut. But you had invented that on that video. Prior to that video, was it a piece of tape you were using?
It was just a piece of duct tape. But after a while, it became, there's a picture, I'll have to send it to you. There's a picture of me and Ronnie with a double neck Warlock.
Yeah, the red one. Yeah, I saw it. I mean,
on the second fret, on the top one, you'll notice, but on the top one, each string is a B string. Because it vibrates the best and the most solid. And so the bridge piece was actually, it was a MIDI guitar.
Oh, wow.
So the bridge piece had LED reeds. So it would automatically, by plucking the string, it would automatically tune the low B string, which is I use 10s. So it was a 17, I think. No, 13, isn't it? Yeah. I think a 13.
That's right. 13.
Yeah. So they were all 13 B13s on there. So when I would pluck what should be the low E, it automatically tuned it to a low E and all the way up the neck. And then I had a friend of mine inlay magnets on the second fret. So that way, and then the clamp had, there was a magnet on top and then a sponge on here. So when it would touch the second fret, the magnetic pole would pull so hard that the sponge would recreate my hand, muting it. Okay. And then when I wanted it to go back and stick on to the headstock without being used, that too would click by magnets. And I think Michael Pateo Angelo, uses something like that now. He might have stumbled across the same guitar guy I used,
Okay.
But yeah, that's where it went. It went from a piece of tape to that. And it was going to be great because at the time we were using samplers where one string would have like the first half of a piece of music with a cello, and then the other string would have the second piece. Then another string would have a choir to go over that cello piece, and then the other string would have the choir going over the second half of that cello piece. And then the second guitar underneath had the same muting system where I would accompany that. So I had cello and choir accompanying me while I was playing solo to it. All I had to do was pluck the strings on the top guitar, and as long as that B string would vibrate long enough for the LED light to pick it up, it would trigger the sampler and play that sample of that bar of music, the cello, and likewise with the chorus. But it was so delicate that we needed to make sure that there was somebody there to make sure to be able to recalibrate it. And then the company went out of business just before. That was going to be introduced for the Dream Evil tour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's innovation is what it is, and it's that creative process. Instead of you just writing a solo, you're actually coming up with ideas to try to reinvent the wheel. Because again, like you said, you're in competition with the likes of Eddie Van Halen, and that's tough.
Yeah, what do you do? Where do you go from there?
Right.
And
so
so
what was your?
A lot of
I did
people
want
think that solo is just a bunch of mishmash, which in a way it kind of is. But if you go back in time in your brain and try to think about, here's a kid who used to live in his car, who's now headlining with Ronnie James Dio, his favorite singer, and trying to come up with something new because Eddie Van Halen has just, took over.
Right.
That's where that solo comes from. It's not like, hey, look at what I can do, everybody. Aren't I great? Because people listen to it with 2024 knowledge and ears and judge, a 1986 solo of that particular situation.
Oh, it's not mishmash. It's definitely amazing. It really is. It will continue to stand the test of time, just like great music. It really will. What was your breaking moment into the business? I mean, what actually got you in? Was it hooking up with Rough Cutt? Was it, what was the first foot in the door on that?
Well, this is where some people won't, kind of give me grief, but, God, because I believed in God from the very beginning. And there was a time when I gave up certain things because somebody told me that God wouldn't approve. So I was just, okay, And then, but I got those things back 10 times over. But so when I grew up in an abusive family, and these were atrocities where I actually was at one point in the hospital praying that my leg didn't get amputated as a result of some of the atrocities perpetrated upon me as a child. There was some sometimes when I forget that some people, can't, I know you could handle it, but sometimes when I tell people they want to know and they get sick to their stomach, some people actually throw up of the things that happened to me as a child. So I chose to live in a car and on the streets. I was too young to own a car and I was too young to have a job, but some friends of mine, their fathers allowed me to have a job at their company. So I had a full-time job, had a wind-up clock. I had 2 full bottles, 7-Up bottles, liter bottles of water, wet my hair and then shampoo it and then rinse it and, shave in the side view mirror, my clothes in the trunk and go to work. And then all I had was my guitar. But sometimes I would go to people's houses and give them lessons and use their amps. And so with my last $20, I made a demo tape with a band called Vengeance because I was able to borrow amps and stuff to play with them. And that was one of the bands that Jake was in prior to leaving and going up to LA. So I was already kind of replacing Jake before I replaced Jake officially,
Right.
So we made this 3-song demo for my last $20 and beer for this guy. And I was in a band called, I was trying to get a band together with a guy named Perry McCarty. He had a real strong voice. He ended up in a band called Warrior. And then he was in was it Steve Stevens in the Playboys where they got a song on the first Ace Ventura movie. But anyways, if people look up Warrior, Fighting for the Earth, that guy. And so him and I were going to put a band together. But then he got an audition for Warrior and got it. So he felt bad he felt like he left me behind. So he goes, give me some of your demos and I'll pass them around. So I'm back in the car again. And luckily for me, Warrior and Rough Cutt were friends. So at the time, Dave Alford, the drummer, was kind of like the leader. I don't know how he became the leader because he was I don't want to, anyways, he shouldn't have been, but he was. But he passed that demo on to Ronnie. And Ronnie said, we got to get this kid up here. But how do you find a kid who lives in his car?
Oh, wow.
So I just happened to have done a favor for a friend who wanted to give me a favor. He had a friend whose father gave him a house. And the way he made money was renting rooms. So my friend was one of his roommates renting a room, and he said, "Hey, can my friend Craig, crash on the couch for a little bit?" But in order to earn my keep, I had to clean up all the dog poop in the backyard and be the gopher and go to the store, get them sandwiches or beer or whatever they wanted, and I was like the butler, But that house had a phone, and they tracked me down. I don't know how they did it. But they tracked me down. They called that house, and one of the guys decided to say, "Yeah, I'll drive you up there." And then I stayed the night at Perry McCarty's apartment. And that night the phone rang, and they picked up the phone, and they looked like the President of the United States had just called. They said, "Okay," and they go, "Ronnie wants to meet you. He's going to be there tomorrow." Because he wasn't at all the auditions, because it was up to Rough Cutt to pick the guitar player after Jake left.
Okay.
But this particular tape, for some reason, meant something to Ronnie. And so he wanted to be there, and he wanted to meet me, and he wanted to oversee that audition. And needless to say, I had no sleep that night.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine.
And so
how do you prepare for that?
Well, yeah, and it was being held in a recording studio. So in the big room where they would normally record the drums was Rough Cutt, and all the guitar players would come in and audition. And then in the console room, there's always a couch in the back, for people. So there's Ronnie and Wendy sitting on the couch. As I approached the room, I'm like, "Oh, there he is," And there, they talk about the threshold, that where the door is, that's the final last moments of being inside the room and outside the room.
Yeah.
As I crossed over that threshold, Ronnie looks up and goes, "Hey, Craig," and he gets up. He didn't have to. He could have just said, "Hey, dude, come on in. We're waiting for you. You're next." And that's all he had to do. That would have been good enough. But he stands up and comes over and shakes my hand, and he goes, "Don't be so overwhelmed. I'm a fan of what you do as well." I'm thinking to myself, yeah, right. But that's what he says to me to calm me down. Then we start talking. I start saying things like, "People don't think you can sing high." He goes, "I know." I go, because I would learn his melody lines on guitar, and I would be searching for a lower note than it really was. And I would think, it can't possibly be this note. It can't possibly be a D on the 10th fret on the E string. But it was. But when, Stephen Perry hits that note, it sounds like he's in the stratosphere. But when Ronnie hits that note, it sounds like he's just mid-range.
Yeah.
And I go, and we both said, "Because your voice is so thick." And he goes, "Because my voice is so thick." So then that was one bonding moment. And I said, "Well then, and also your lyrics, you say one thing and you mean another. And I've been studying your lyrics, and because everybody told him I'm your biggest fan, right? Everybody wanted to be part of the audition. So everybody was suddenly Ronnie's biggest fan. So and I said, in your lyrics, you say one thing but you mean another. And he goes, "What do you mean by that?" And I was like, "Well, you've heard me say this. You pick a topic that it couldn't be that automatically has like followers almost of that topic, and there couldn't be more diametrically opposed than one another. They are literally almost like enemies, but somehow you unify them because you make them think that song is about them, even though they're on each opposite side. And because your music is so great, they come to the concert, they don't fight each other. You unify them somehow because of they're fans of yours. But it's a dark message. I mean, it's a dark sound, but with a positive message." And he grabs my arm and he goes, "That's right, that's right." And I didn't know that at that moment had forged a relationship that was going to last all the way up until the day he died. Mm. And then when I was in the audition, I didn't know this, but Ronnie rarely sits in with other bands. So now he gets inspired. He comes in and he sits in on Man on the Silver Mountain and Heaven and Hell. So my very first night of meeting him at the audition for Rough Cutt, I'm playing Heaven and Hell and Man on the Silver Mountain with Ronnie James Dio. And then he comes up to me, face to face, whisper, and goes, "What's the lyric to the second verse?" I'm the day. Oh, the lover of life. Oh, I don't know if it was a test, because sometimes he really did kind of forget his lyrics.
Yeah.
And then at that night, I was sitting on the couch at his home. It was just, he invited me after that audition, just me and him alone, sitting on his couch, talking, watching old Rainbow videos. He looks at me and he goes, "You want to call somebody?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I can tell you're aching to call somebody." You know. And we became friends, and that's how. And when we were doing the demos for Rough Cut, he stopped the tape out of the middle of nowhere when I was doing something, and he goes, "Goldy, if Viv ever doesn't work out, you'd be my first choice." And then he goes, "Now play." And then he hits record. I'm like, how do you process that? You know, suddenly play. You know.
Ozark Business Systems, the area's oldest authorized Sharp multifunction printer dealer. We offer sales, leasing, and services on MFPs, scanners, and printers. Give Jared a call at 417-451-4440 or come by 122 East Spring Street in Neosho, Missouri. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Ozark Business Systems, your solution for all your printer needs.
And we became friends, and that's how. And when we were doing the demos for Rough Cut, he stopped the tape out of the middle of nowhere when I was doing something, and he goes, "Goldy, if Viv ever doesn't work out, you'd be my first choice." And then he goes, "Now play." And then he hits record. I'm like, how do you process that? You know, suddenly play. You know, that's why there were no auditions. You know, Viv was out and I was in, and that was it. We had 6 rehearsals, and off we went. We only rehearsed 6 times because he knew that I knew the songs. He knew that I knew. Mm-hmm. And boom, that was it. That's how it started.
Oh, plus you had a relationship with him, and you were a good fit. I mean, there was that chemistry there. Now, am I wrong in
time?
Am I wrong in saying that you're his longest standing guitar player because of all the albums you did with him? You did more albums than any other player did. And in fact, like Killing the Dragon, you wrote all that stuff pretty much.
Not all of it, but there was some I didn't get credit for, but that's okay. Like Killing the Dragon, you know. Okay. I've known him since 1983, all the way up until his passing. So, yeah, I would have been the one who knew him the most, but was by his side the most. Because even when I wasn't even in his band, like he would come to my wedding and receptions and stuff. And Wendy was still my manager, even though I wasn't in the band. You know, because we were a family. We loved each other. You know, and there was so many things that he would do and say that as a kid, because I'm still that 13-year-old kid, you know, who heard Ronnie James Dio on the radio for the very first time. You know, I'm still a fan. Mm-hmm. And I still get those chills and those weird feelings, even though he's no longer here. Sometimes it took me almost,
Oh, you're good.
It took a long time to listen to his voice after he passed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And every now and then I still think to myself, God, that's me.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm talking about somebody else. But I mean, I told you about his kindness. You know, some people know the tuna fish sandwich, but there was a time when I was living with the drummer of Rough Cut, and I made a tuna fish sandwich out of a can of tuna that I bought. And the drummer came out and just threw a fit because he just swore up and down that was his can of tuna. I was like, dude, it's my can of tuna, but I'll buy you an effing can of tuna, man. You know, how much did a can of tuna cost in 1983? And some fan actually told me. It was really funny. By the way, a can of tuna in 1983 was, 79 cents or whatever. Yeah. And so that fit was heard around the world. Yeah. And I didn't say anything to anybody. I just thought it was stupid. Next day, I look outside the window. I just happened to look out the window. There's Ronnie's car pulling up. At least it looked like it. And there's Ronnie and Wendy getting out of the car, both of them with 2 full bags of groceries each. And they're walking up the steps, and I'm in shock. And I should have opened the door, but I was in shock, so they had to kick the door because they didn't have a free hand to knock. So they kicked the door. I open the door. They storm in. They slam all 4 bags of groceries on the table. They say, "These are for Craig. Leave him alone." And they stormed out as fast as they stormed in. And later I found out that Ronnie had shut down the Holy Diver recordings once he heard about this. And he was so angry over that he said, let's take a break. And him and Wendy went to the store and personally picked out items that would equal 4 bags of groceries, and then personally hand delivered them to me and made sure that to make the remark, these are for Craig, leave him alone, and then go back and start back up the Holy Diver recordings. So when he does something like that for you, how do you forget something like that? How does that not affect you for the rest of your life?
Yeah. That's the beauty of somebody that absolutely loves you. And to think when you listen to that Holy Diver album, I was like, well, in what song did he stop?
I know. I know.
I'm trying to think of a lyrical reference where I could make a joke there. That's good stuff. I'll come up with it. Give me time.
Holy Diver, I guess.
Shame on the night.
Shame on the night. Yeah. Shame on the Shame on the guy.
Yeah. Hey, my favorite story from you. Now I don't know if you said this in interviews before because I hadn't heard it. You told it to me personally, but it blows me away and I love it. And it does share a story about your faith, but first off, I mean, when were you introduced to God? When did you actually have a relationship with God? I mean, was there a moment, or did you just always know He's there? Or
well, it was. I always knew He was there. My first memory of a God-related memory was when it was around Christmas time, and I was sitting on the bottom bunk with a little stuffed Santa Claus that smelled like blood. Because for some reason back then, the smell of blood actually was friendly to me. That was something I was used to. So it comforted me somehow, the smell of blood. And I closed my eyes and I felt and saw 3 circles. But I physically felt them. And I saw them, in my mind's eye. And I opened my eyes, all excited to see these 3 circles, and they were gone. So I closed my eyes again, and there they were. I could feel them physically, see them in my mind's eye, and then open my eyes all expectantly, and they were gone. It happened 3 times. And then my grandmother loves to tell me stories about what I would say when I was a kid. And one of them was, when she read me the Bible, I said, so that's who He is.
The Trinity.
In my experience, even though there were atrocities being perpetrated upon me, I had someone to talk to. And I knew that everything was going to be okay, but I didn't know how. It was all out of my control. I had to constantly be on edge because I never knew when it was going to happen, but I knew it was going to happen. It was going to be bad. So one day, fast forward, I'm backstage at a Dio concert, and there's a fan who wanted to meet me because they wanted to meet the rock star guitar player who was playing with Ronnie James Dio and all the 18-foot fire-breathing dragon. And I was very similar, like Ronnie from the beginning. I would want to treat them as good as possible and as nice as possible because I too was a fan. How would I want to be treated if I get backstage at a Dio concert, And I saw how kind and Ronnie was to all of his fans. And all the time, there was never one fan that he never asked about their personal life, about, how's your mom doing? They'll be like, you remember, hey, and he would remember their names. Hey, Mark, did your brother get that job he was going after? Like, yeah, he did. How do you, that was 3 years ago. I know, And I was like, wow. So, I would talk to these kids, and they would tell me their story. And sure enough, there would be one that had similar circumstances as I did as a child. And they always ended up their story with, but you don't know what it feels like. And they felt so ashamed, so ashamed. And I got the chance to put my arm around them and look them straight in the eye and say, I know exactly how that feels. I know exactly what that feels like. And they look at me and they're, oh, what? And then the conversation would change. And many times Ronnie would also, you know, he would reach into people's lives. I remember one time he handed me an envelope. Didn't have anything in it. Gave me an address. And he goes, go bring this envelope to this address, please. That's all he said. I said, okay. So I looked it up back then on the Thomas Guide, you know, and found the apartment, knocked on the apartment. It was this short, chubby little girl. And I said, Ronnie wanted me to give this to you. And she opens it up, and it was money for rent. She couldn't pay her rent that month.
Yeah.
You know, it's stuff like that, you know. But the God thing is that, you know, after doing that the first time, I started noticing how many times that would happen. And I was actually able to help other people. And so I remember that, you know, in my days in church and stuff like that, about him, you know, people don't like the fact that he allows certain things to happen.
Right.
You know, and that pisses them off, you know. But when you really think about it, many of the things that are bad can be traced back to man, not God.
Absolutely.
You know, and even cancer, you know, there's, you know, all the different, and earthquakes and all sorts of stuff. You know, where do you think those fault lines were created? They were created through all the bomb testing back in the 50s and 60s, you know, and radiation. And how many TV commercials do we have to see where, you know, a class action suit against this one company who forced the medication on us, and now it's causing cancer?
Mm-hmm.
You know, God didn't do that. Man did, you know. And the only way, you know, people will say, well, then if he's such a loving God, why does he allow all this stuff? He has to. This is a live database. You know, we are like these ultimate organisms where we are so sensitive, where we can feel the slightest bit of touch, the slightest bit of joy, and the slightest bit of atrocities. They all have to be there. They all have to exist, because if what we weren't supposed to do didn't come in a shape and form that was so attractive, then it wouldn't be a choice. It'd be easy to do the right thing, and everybody would do it. It has to hurt sometimes. Pain, you know, they even the people who work out, you know, no pain, no gain. They'll say that.
Yeah.
They'll say that all day long. But when it comes to God, it's like, oh, wait a second. You know, how can a loving God allow you to, you know, you work out, pain, no gain. Yeah. But it's the same thing in life. Yeah. The military will tell you, they come back missing an arm and 2 legs, and they'll say, I want to go back. They can't, but they want to go back after such atrocities has hit them. You know, my girlfriend's father was in the war, and he saw atrocities. When he came back, I don't know how that man held it together. That man has got it together. But it was those kind of things that I started to realize that, okay, just because there's bad stuff happening, that really does mean choices. There will come a day where we don't have to make those choices anymore, you know. And it does sound like a fairy tale to people. It does sound stupid to people. It does sound like there's some man in a robe with white long beard and long hair up there in sandals saying, you know, good luck, you know,
get out of my yard.
Yeah, and because I said so.
Right. I don't want you having fun.
Yeah. No fun. And I remember thinking, there was times and there was no way I could go to a party or anything without a couple of drinks of alcohol, because I was, you know, I had absolutely no. You know, what a stupid thing to do, to choose to go on stage with stage fright and low self-esteem. That's a great job for a guy like that to pick.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I'd have a couple of drinks and I'm good, you know, but little by little I started to find out that it was a counterfeit benefit. You know, I started to have problems with alcohol later on in life.
Yeah.
You know, it's because I started to rely on that. And a pastor told me once, he goes, Goldy, he goes, for every dollar, there's a counterfeit dollar, which means whatever benefit you get from drinking, that's a counterfeit benefit. Therefore, there must be a real. And I didn't understand it at first, but I kid you not, I found it. It takes a little bit of time, you know, because sometimes it's kind of like playing a video game. and you want to get to the next level. You've been at level 20 for like 3 weeks, and you want to get to level 21. And then somebody comes along who's on level 23 and says, hey, see that little stupid little thing that's in the corner there? Click on that. Why? Just do it. Oh, whoa. And then you see that little thing right there? Click on it, hold it, and spin it around in 3 circles 3 times. Oh, wow. See that? Oh, okay, well, try it again. Try it again. Now they're at level 21. Okay, that's great. But what if you knew the guy who created the game?
Yeah. That's right.
I know the guy who created the game. I'm the kind of guy that will read the instructions on the inside of the box before I play. Most people go, we'll just learn as we go. And that's just, that's life is like that.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to lose and somebody's going to win, but we all really do kind of win. Everything comes with a benefit. We eat. It's pleasurable. In order to maintain our species, we have to have sex, which is pleasurable. Even peeing and pooping is pleasurable because it's kind of like, it's a release. It's right. Everything is pleasurable. Everything comes with a benefit. Everything, even pain, even the worst possible thing. Your worst day turns into your best day. Every single gold record I have on my wall, every single good thing that ever happened to me came from a prior failure.
Right.
Now I could have sat there and sucked my thumb and said, poor little me. But instead, I got back up and I decided to figure out what the heck I was doing wrong. And all of a sudden, boom, I got a gold record. All of a sudden, I got David Lee Roth calling me at home and the producer of Pink Floyd calling me at home. I got Ronnie James Dio, Joe Lynn Turner, Vinny Appice. All these big names, because God says your gifts will make room for you and set you before great men. And I'll be an idiot if that didn't actually happen. God knows what he's doing. So it was faith, but not really faith, because I just said, okay. It didn't make any sense, but I said, okay, just like that, if you're in level 20 and the guy says, see that little thing in the corner, click on it. It doesn't make any sense, but you got to now click and hold on that one and go around in circles 3 times, because there's phone hackers that'll show you that. They'll say, go into settings, so that way you're no longer tracked. Go into your settings and click on this and click on that. And he goes, now tap on it 7 times.
Right.
And then all of a sudden something opens up and you're no longer being tracked. Now we'll do that to keep from being tracked on our phones. We'll do all sorts of stuff that doesn't make any sense. We'll go to the store and have a box of tampons on the register. That doesn't make us feel very good as men. Who wants to go to the store and check out with a box of tampons? But we do it because our girlfriend or our wife needs them.
Right.
We'll do all sorts of stuff that makes us uncomfortable, that doesn't feel right or doesn't make any sense, because we get an immediate, reaction. Sometimes it's not immediate with God, but it always works. It always works. Sorry.
You're right. I'm with you on that, because I've felt the same thing, and at times I'm like, but why did it take you so long to give me the answer? But the payoff is so amazing, and to tie in with what you said, I've experienced that too in my life. It's like I've had a lot of my friends tell me, don't you wish you would have quit your job of 30 years and started doing a music store, 20 years ago? Yeah, but man, my life would look totally different. I wouldn't be successful in the music store. I wouldn't have met my wife, which is so important.
Yep.
And there's so many other things. I wouldn't have had the freedom to open the store either, or the financial backing to open the store, because I wouldn't have had anything saved. So
right.
That's so true. But in your instance, what I love is the story. And I don't know, again, if you put this in any kind of interview, you know where I'm going with this.
I haven't, no.
Yeah, okay, so people need to hear about this story, because it ties in with God and it ties in with everything. You were going to school in San Diego, high school?
High school, and I was. We had a Bible study, and those things sound so silly, I might as well said I was playing hopscotch with all the 7th grade girls, and I had to wear pink. That's about
so that wasn't cool.
Holding a Bible study,
Yeah.
But we were, so we had a small group of people, and we would just, we would read certain things out of the Bible and say what we thought it meant. That's all it was just a bunch of friends. And it started to grow. And then they wanted to kick us out because apparently that where we were wasn't off school grounds enough. So the principal and I were friends. So he says, congregate underneath my window and I'll keep you safe. And so we did. And then one of my best friends who was totally into Richie Blackmore and Ronnie James Dio, him and I had that connection. And he came running over to me and he said, Rainbow's coming to town. And I didn't know. I'm like, oh, no way. And I found out when, and I was there, man. I was there. And one of the guys in the Bible study, who was a little bit, churchy, but still said, if you go to that concert, you're going to be sending the wrong message.
Yeah.
So I bought it. I said, okay, you're probably right. So I sacrificed that. That was the voice I turned to after every beating was Ronnie James Dio. Richie Blackmore was the sound that would soothe me, where I could never be soothed because of the things that were happening. That was my time. That was my moment. That was my greatest moment at that time in my life, that Rainbow was coming to San Diego and playing the sports arena. And I said, okay, I won't go because this one guy from our Bible study says it'll send the wrong message. Now, God says if you make certain sacrifices for him, that he's going to give you things in return, sometimes 100 times over, sometimes 1,000 times over. But I kid you not, if I didn't get Richie Blackmore or Ronnie James Dio back 1,000 times over.
Looking for a place to connect, grow, and be inspired? Discover Co-Lift, a faith-based gathering where everyone is welcome.
Join us every Friday night at 7 p.m. at the Oaks Building, located at 321 South Hamilton Street in Neosho.
Experience the joy of live worship music as we come together to praise and lift each other up.
Dive into engaging scriptural verses, heartfelt testimonies, and inspiring Bible studies that strengthen your faith and community.
Share your prayer requests and let us lift you up in prayer as a supportive group.
And don't forget the kids. Our children's class provides fun, faith-filled activities centered around the Bible and Jesus.
At Co-Lift, we also seek opportunities to help our community by showing the love of Jesus. Together, we make a difference through acts of service and compassion.
Co-Lift meets every Friday at 7 p.m. at the Oaks Building in Neosho, where everyone is welcome. Co-Lift is more than a meeting, it's a family.
Come for the community, stay for the faith. See you this Friday at Co-Lift.
For more details, visit our Co-Lift Facebook page to find out what activities this week's meeting will entail.
Co-Lift, where faith,
friendship,
and community come together.
My time. That was my moment. That was my greatest moment at that time in my life, that Rainbow was coming to San Diego and playing the sports arena. And I said, okay, I won't go because this one guy from our Bible study says it'll send the wrong message. Now, God says if you make certain sacrifices for him, that he's going to give you things in return, sometimes 100 times over, sometimes 1,000 times over. But I kid you not, if I didn't get Richie Blackmore or Ronnie James Dio back 1,000 times over.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that
and more.
How long did you regret that afterwards? I mean,
very long.
Yeah.
Very long.
And when did it hit you that, oh my gosh.
And all the stories of how great they were and the songs they played, and
God.
And Richie smashed his guitar and lit it on fire and did this and did that. I'm like, oh man. I just like, don't tell me anymore.
Yeah. Oh wow. Again, but God gets the last laugh, the last blessing for you, and I love that. That is great. It is. Well, I don't know how long you want to talk. Go for it. Is there anything else that you want to talk about in particular? I mean, any projects that you're working on right now?
Well, me and the singer from Dream Child, Diego Valdez, him and I are doing some new music right now, and it's coming out really good. I'm going to be releasing the first solo album, Hidden in Plain Sight. It's remastered, and it sounds really good. And there's at least 4 songs on there that haven't ever been heard before, never released and never heard before. Because at the time, we had so many songs. At that time, you couldn't fit more than like 11 or 12 songs on one CD. So we had to cut certain songs. Now we don't have to. So there's 4 songs that are really cool that were just, they're in demo shape, you know, but the songs are really cool. And there's one demo of a song that we redid with David Glenn Isley, and it's called Over and Over. And it's real, that song's great because David Isley has a really great heavy metal voice. He just doesn't like heavy metal. You know?
Oh, wow.
But he would, you know, at one point, John Kolodner, who was helping Blue Murder, wanted David Glenn Isley as the lead singer for Blue Murder. And he went and auditioned. And John Kolodner was like, that's the cat, man. Because if you go back and listen to that first Giuffria record, there's, you know, I hate to say it, but screams and yells and gruff tones that he has that are very impressive. It's not all just that, you know, light call to the heart stuff, you know, right. And I noticed that. So I actually had him sing on a few songs, and you can hear that gruff tone. You can hear that in it when it's that tone is mixed with heavy metal. It's like, wow. But we have the original version of the Ritual band doing Over and Over. And it's from a cassette. And the guy who's so good is a guy named Sven Erik Seholm. He's a local guy here, and he mastered it. And we're looking at each other like, that was from a cassette, you know, because it sounds so good, so powerful, you know. And so there's one song, Light of the Dark, Bad Sensation, and Strange Fascination. And some of those songs are really cool. And so those are coming out on that album. And just for everybody who, you know, set the record straight, I didn't leave Dio so I could pursue a solo project, a solo career. I never in a million years thought to myself that I would leave that band. Never in a million years did I think, okay, great, thanks, Ronnie, I'm out of here, bye. I'm going to go, I think I'm, you know, Mr. Bitchin' now, and I'm going to go do a solo album. You know, one day I'll tell that. I told you.
Right.
One day I'll tell that story of why I left. And it's actually really a very simple story. But when you reach deep down to the root of the cause, it's pretty intense.
Yeah. But again, I think that even at that, God was working in your life. There was a different chapter in your life, and and
I'm proud of that record. I wish, glad that record actually came out now.
Yeah,
you know,
you didn't see it at the time, but it has your stamp on it. That's the thing that I think that most people don't get unless they're a guitar player. But your own voice is across that, not literally. You know, people talk all the time. I grew up during a time when I say, man, I love, you know, AC/DC's really good. They're great. Yeah. I didn't like AC/DC's Back in Black, you know, because it's not Bon Scott, so it's not AC/DC. I heard that all my life in high school, and I'd scratch my head going, well, they didn't have a choice. He's dead. Should they not play music now? And so for that reason, listen to Back in Black. Are you telling me you wish that album never came out? That is one of the greatest of all time. I mean,
I agree.
So yeah, I mean, there's so much. Yeah, they're still doing it today. But yeah, and it's going on with Alice in Chains too. It's the same thing. I really didn't want to try to listen to them without Lane Staley. It's going to be so weird. But oh my gosh, Jerry Cantrell really sets that band apart. And I know that's not really music that I don't know if you ever listened to Chains or not. But man, I was blown away when I saw them live with the new singer William.
No, I haven't heard him with their new singer yet, but I mean, I was jealous because I got kicked out of the industry for 10 years, so I hated every one of them. Yeah. You know, but you know, even though some of the other bands, you know, that what's it called? What's it called? Black something Rain from I forget who. I'll have to get it. We'll have to edit this.
It's a band.
Yeah, it was one of those Seattle sound bands that turned
Soundgarden.
Soundgarden.
Okay.
Black Hole Sun.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
Black Hole Sun. That you just can't deny it. You can't. Back then I wanted to hate them. I wanted to hate them all. I wanted to hate Nirvana. I wanted to hate each and every Stone Temple Pilots. I wanted to hate that band, and then the Black Hole Sun was like, wow. Okay.
Good. Yeah.
And I kid you not, man, there was a time when they were rehearsing, where we were rehearsing, and Ronnie was still with us when I got back in the band. And I just kind of knocked on the door, walked in, and they were like, Craig, come on in. It's really cool how people will react. It's like, I thought, like, they're going to be like, who are you and what do you want? Like Zach
Right.
Wilde will be there, and I'll knock on the door. Me and him get along really. He's a great guy. We don't hang out or have each other's phone numbers, but wherever we're in the rehearsals, I get a chance to knock on the door, walk in, and have a little one-on-one, and it's, so that kind of stuff is cool too, because I bring that up because that's like garnish and extra. I got, not only did I get Richie Blackmore and Ronnie James Dio back 1,000 times over, but all this extra stuff. And I've been married 4 times, and I came up with a list of what I needed attributes in women in order for me to have a successful relationship. And that list grew as I began to try to cross off the things that I needed to work on. And after a while, when I would read that list, I'm thinking, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way. I'm going to have to cross something off. And then all of a sudden, Lisa pops into my life, and not only she blew away the list, but I got more than what I was asking for.
Well, that's great.
I thought I was asking for too much, like you're talking about with your wife. It's like, the timing of everything. Had we known each other 50 years ago, I probably would have never left San Diego.
Right.
She told me, she said she would have told me to leave and go after my dream, but I don't know if I could have.
Right. Well, also, and I thought about this too, because I prayed for Leah. Gosh, I don't want to make this about her and make her embarrassed, but I prayed for her for a long time. And I'll share this because I was so childish with God. I'm like, I've been praying for 3 years now. God, you know what? I'm just gonna, if you're not gonna bring the right girl, the one to me,
right,
then I'm just gonna keep dating the wrong girl. How childish. And I was brutally honest with God, and I talked to God like that.
That's it. Being brutally honest.
Yeah, if that's what you want, I'll keep doing the wrong thing. Living in sin. This is your fault. And it wasn't until after I got, does that sound familiar? It does. It sounds like Adam and Eve almost, because they blamed, everybody else. Eve blamed the serpent, and then Adam, of course, blamed Eve. But that's where I was at. Anyways, I don't think people want to hear all that. But the point is, when I got with Leah, God made it really clear to me that you wouldn't have been ready for her 7 years ago. You really wouldn't. You weren't mature enough. You weren't not just mature, but you weren't ready to change. And it's been a blessing, absolute blessing.
Because even it says in the Bible, it talks about things are going to work out even if you don't believe in him or not. It's called the gifts are without repentance, meaning that everybody has gifts. Everybody has something that they can contribute but he will magnify it and make it greater, if you believe in him, and there's certain steps, people, this is the dumbest thing. Why it has to be thought of as so dumb as, are you saved? That thing, that whole stupid thing. Sorry, God, about that. I should say it differently, but this is just how I feel. It's that I really, I don't know why it's so silly that it's so difficult for people to say, I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior. That sentence is hated so much, and it's been used so poorly, and Christians have done so many stupid things that it makes believing in Jesus, just the name Jesus, makes people just absolutely fly off the handle.
Right.
And I feel bad because it's because of people, not because of God. I mean, when you think about it, Jesus was cool, man. I mean,
he was a rebel. Yeah.
So, but everybody you can be successful. You can have everything in this whole world. You really can without God. You don't need God to have billions and billions of dollars. You don't need God to have the best car. You don't need God to have, the best looking body, the best looking face, the best looking sounding voice, selling billions of records instead of millions of records. You don't need God to have the greatest sex. You don't need God to have the best high. You don't. You won't go to hell because you smoke pot. You won't go to hell because you don't read your Bible every day. You won't go to hell because you don't go to church every Sunday. And when I was speaking in church, I actually looked at the pastor and I said, "Isn't that right, Pastor?" And he had to turn around and look at his congregation and go, "He's right." Because that's what blows it for everybody. Everybody thinks you've got to turn into one of these weirdos who could walk around and go, oh, hallelujah. Do you know Jesus is your Lord and Savior? Oh, hallelujah, brother. We don't have to be, that is the dumbest thing. But people believe that that's who they're going to become if they believe in God, and start talking like that, start acting like those imbeciles. He doesn't care who wins a Grammy.
That's right. Yeah.
He doesn't care who wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But they'll be up there going, "I'm going to thank my Lord, my Savior, Lord, and Jesus Christ, my Savior, for this Grammy. Thank you, God." What he cares about is that you do your best. And then, if you get a Grammy, what you do with that new status, that's what he cares about.
Yeah.
Because what did I do with my new status coming out of the car and onto a headlining Madison Square Garden type situation with Ronnie James Dio? What did I do with that situation? When I learned all this stuff behind closed doors that nobody shares, what did I do with it? Did I keep it to myself or did I start sharing it? That's the key. That's why we're supposed to believe one way, because it unifies us. It doesn't divide us. It unifies us. For all of us to work together, because people, I was even talking to a very good friend of mine the other day. And I said, the reason why a lot of this stuff doesn't get shared, this behind the scenes stuff that would really make or break somebody's career, doesn't get shared because the minute they share that information with that other person, they create their own competition. And they go, "Well, he's right." I go, "Yes, that's right. But I think that if I share one thing with 10 different people, 10 different things are going to happen. It's going to create a community where people work together. They don't have to work together for the same goal, but they work together instead of against each other." However, Spock would say that's illogical. I'm illogical according to Spock. That guy keeping it to himself and going as high as he could possibly go, that's logical. Don't create your own competition. That's illogical.
When you were playing with Ronnie, I didn't know this, but didn't you? I thought you told me you were actually you were going to churches at the same time that you were actually in Dio.
Yeah.
What drove you to do that, and how did that go?
Well, it was just because there was a prophet. There was a modern day prophet. A lot of people don't understand, and think that that's kind of crazy too. But there was a guy named Kim Clement. He was a really great guy, long hair from Australia. He could have been a total rock and roller, and he was a great prophet. And he spoke of things before they happened. I mean, he wasn't one of those guys who had a thing in his ear, and you fill out a questionnaire before you go in, and then he knows all this stuff about you because they're feeding him the answers. I witnessed it. I went to the church that, there was one church in Northridge in California that he went to all the time. And at one point, he actually wanted me to play guitar with him from time to time. He would actually, before he would even start, sometimes he'd go, "Where's Goldy?" And I'd have to wait. "I'm here." He's like, "Okay." Then he would start. And so he came to me and he said, because he knew that was bothering me. And it was bothering a lot of people. That's why my brother left the church, because they were giving him grief. How can he believe in God and be in Dio at the same time? Because to be perfectly frank, it was that Holy Diver album cover. Even Ronnie told me, he goes, "Look, the chain is broken. Was it because he was trying to save the priest and pull him out of the water? Or was it because of the thrashing that he gave the priest?" It's up to you to decide.
Yeah, and I'll go a step further with that. I'll go a step further with that. It's a Catholic priest. I'm just going to leave it.
Yes, and Ronnie was Catholic.
Yeah, and his background absolutely will tell you all about. He had a very, yeah, and I think James Hetfield's the same way. They had a very bitter taste in their mouth from religion, and that's understandable, absolutely. But I know that Hetfield's matured in that. A lot of guys have matured in that and came back around to God in a sense, and I think we all do that as life goes on. We kind of go, okay, I'm not a kid anymore. I don't have to be cool. Yeah. And God's made it really evident to me that he is here and he's kept me alive this long. You got one life to live, you know?
Well, it's guys like Rudy Sarzo. He went on TBN with me and this guy named Jeff Fenholt. We were in a band together before I joined Dio and before they joined Whitesnake. And Rudy Sarzo, God bless him, man. He was the one, because I always wanted to make being responsible seem cool. And he was the first one to do it because he never cheated on his wife. He was one of the best looking guys in the business. That man could have had anybody he wanted to. And he never once did he give in to temptation like that. He stopped drinking because he said something mean to his wife one night and swore to his wife that I'll never be mean to you again. And he stopped drinking. It wasn't because of God or anything like that. It was, but he believes in God. I mean, but when I was in a band with him, he was very responsible. He would have fun, but there's a way to have everything. It's like there are versions of fun. There are versions of having it all that seem and feel great. And everybody says, but you're going to have an empty hole and all that kind of stuff. And some people don't feel that empty hole. They feel complete. They feel great. They feel like that's it, man. This is it. This is all there is to it. But I got to tell you, it's mathematically impossible to get nothing out of something.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
And I saw a special about how the Christian way started changing a lot of people's lives because the disciples decided to, instead of go, okay, I give up. It was all a sham. I don't want to die. They decided to die brutal deaths. I don't know anybody who would say, okay. I'm going to die a brutal death. I give up. I give up.
Right.
I don't know anybody that would go, no, do whatever you want to me. I know what I know. I saw what I saw. And how that started to affect other people around them and how that spread. And there was a lot of different societies that were brutal to their people, that started being more compassionate to their people. Mm-hmm. You take God out of the picture and make that one thing your religion, then you're doing the exact opposite that you said we're not supposed to do. There is no one way. But yet they'll turn their thing into it's the only way.
Right.
Buddhists are not going to tell you, oh yeah, follow Jesus. Numerologists are not going to tell you follow Jesus too. Horoscope people are not going to say, oh yeah, but some of them will say, oh yeah, it's all the same. It's all the same, just a different name. Everything's the same.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But that's not true. It's a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the ultimate leave God out of the picture answer to the question. Because when man seeks only the wisdom of man in order to solve man's problems, is the problem of mankind.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's deep. I remember I told you about a bunch. I love Fred Price and him talking about that. And he said a really reasonable thing. He said, I've heard that Allah is God, and maybe Allah, the Muslims, maybe that's just God under a different name. He goes, that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, why couldn't there be several paths to God? He goes, but that contradicts what the Bible says.
Right.
And if Allah is the same God as the God that we worship, there's a real easy way to test that, and that is, do they say the same thing about the same subjects?
Right.
And to say it nicely, they do not.
That's right.
So that's how you know that they're different.
Right. Yeah.
But we live in a world that there is a devil and he's a great deceiver. So he's going to try to deceive us and pull us with different directions, like you said, with numerology and horoscopes and all that. The horoscopes, I mean, I can read. It's so funny. I'll read a horoscope. Well, did a long time ago. And I'd read a horoscope and I'm like, that applies to me. Oh my God, that does sound just like me. Oh, wrong month. Wait a minute. Let me go. Oh, that sounds like me too. Yeah.
At a party, I Xeroxed because I was kind of good at it, where I would Xerox a page from a horoscope book and then switch the name and then make a copy of that, and then there would always be these black lines around where I cut out the name and put it on the piece of paper.
Yeah.
So then I would make another copy with white out, and then that looked perfectly normal, and I would hand it out to people, and it was totally switched, and they'd all go, "Yeah, that's me, that's me."
Yeah. The analogy that I was given was, you take a car like a Porsche, and you look at the Porsche, and it looks different. It looks different than a big 4-wheel drive Dodge truck, big dually. But you turn them over and they all look the same underneath. So, I mean, we're humans. We all look the same, but God does give us our different attributes. And so, and what does that, where does that get us? I think what it comes down to for me is like what you said. It's like, where is Christ in that? I'm not worried about a bad image. Because of Christianity. I know there's been a lot of people that I agree with you. It's like, I don't want to be that. That was my rebellious stage was, well, I don't want to be that. And what's the term that you hear all the time? Well, there's just a bunch of hypocrites. And so therefore I don't,
judgmental.
Yeah, but what exactly we're humans too.
Yeah. I saw somebody say something once. It was great. This guy named Cliff who's on YouTube a lot. He's great. He said, well, when a piano player blows a Bach piece, nobody goes after Bach.
Yeah, totally. Right. Who's going to do Christ better than Jesus Christ?
But then this one lady said, yeah, but Bach doesn't claim to be what God claims to be. Okay, I get that. But what your point being, yes, all the bad stuff really can be traced back to humans, not gods. I think is ultimately what you're saying is that.
Yes.
All the misinterpretations, there's ways you can make the Bible say totally conflicting things.
We got it. All right, I got this. Hey, everybody, this is Chris from the legendary Subpar group, Steve and the other guys. I need to hijack this transmission for a second. I just wanted to let you know that you are cordially invited to join us in experiencing what we lovingly call middle ground. Please come join us for God, fellowship, ridiculous fun, and some heavy worship. Maybe you've got questions or want to change the direction of your life to a more spiritual and closer relationship with the one who loves you more than anyone in the universe. Come join us the second Saturday of every month at 7 p.m., 124 East Spring Street on the square in Neosho, Missouri. I'll now release you back to your regularly scheduled program, already in progress. Keep your soul hi-fi.
Totem Paul Radio, where we interview local and international legends, bringing you stories from the road, life experiences, and future artist endeavors. Totem Paul Radio.
I remember one time I was actually a witness in a court case right after the Rodney King thing, where an off-duty black officer, white officers had to use reasonable force to subdue him in order to bring him in because he wasn't complying. And I saw it, but I witnessed it. So I was a witness in that case. And he was suing the city of Los Angeles. And his lawyer couldn't have been the typical, low-life lawyer. I mean, it was just crazy. So I'm on the witness stand, and at one point, they were doing interviews with me. And part of my interview, I was trying to figure out why would an off-duty officer not comply? It didn't make any sense to me. My dad's a police officer. I said, maybe there was a stereotype thing, because there were some robberies on that corner. It was right on the corner of where I lived. It was a Bank of America ATM. And there were robberies, but they were mostly by black men with a gun. I'm not prejudiced at all. Most of my friends were black. I went to all black churches. I'm a member of the NAACP. I'm not, by any means racist whatsoever, but I understand stereotypes. When I come home from Britain, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning, it's still 8 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night for me, so it's my nighttime. So when I go and stand in line at Ralph's wanting to buy a 6-pack of beer at 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning, at that particular point, people are looking at me with my long hair like,
It's gonna start his day like that.
Yeah, man, come on. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. You're buying a 6-pack of beer. Man, you suck, You can see it on their faces,
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody were to tell me, if the checkout person said, what, in fact, sometimes they did, like, what are you buying beer for at 10 o'clock in the morning? And I would have to say, well, because, it's my nighttime right now, Yeah. So I'm on the witness stand now. And the lawyer goes, did you or did you not say black man with a gun? And I knew where he was going. He says, yes or no? I said, well, as a matter of, and he goes, no, yes or no? I said, well, as a matter of fact, he goes, no, yes or no? Well, you're trying to, he goes, yeah. So I looked over at the judge and I said, I can't answer that question. And he says, why can't you answer that question? He goes, because it requires an explanation, because he's taking it out of context. If I say yes or no to that, it's going to sound as though it was a prejudicial thing. That's the core of his case. That is incorrect. And that's what he wants me to do, and I cannot say that because that's not the truth. Aren't we here to find the truth? The judge looks over at the lawyer and says, rephrase the question.
Wow.
And all the cops just cheered.
Yeah.
Because they knew what I was going to do. I looked at the jury and I told them that story I was telling you about stereotypes. I said I was trying to figure out what would make a black off-duty officer with a gun who was it was lawful for him to carry. Why would he not comply to simple, common requests from his white officer comrades? What was that? What could it be? And there was a lot of calls that came in with black men with a gun on that corner. And I thought perhaps maybe he froze like I froze when they said, hey, how come you're buying beer at 10 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
And it won the case. It won the case. I literally saved the city of Los Angeles millions of dollars.
Wow.
Simply by having those experiences. So getting back to the original point is that I did something really great for somebody that I didn't even know based on some of the things that I hated the most about my life. I got my first gold record because of a failure. David Lee Roth, and the producer of Pink Floyd, called me at home because of a failure prior to that. That I decided to figure out what I was doing wrong. All this stuff, no pain, no gain. There's, when a woman is pregnant, she doesn't look any different the day she's pregnant. 9 months later when she's screaming in pain, and then but once that baby's laid on her chest, all of that washes away. But a bond that's created could not be created by any other means. Because when we go through such pain and such almost torture, and then get to the end of it, and it's the big payoff, we don't really care about what we just went through because we got the big payoff. And life is full of big payoffs. It's just nobody wants pain. Nobody wants to hurt. Carol Bennett told Bill Cosby that, the only way to explain childbirth to a man is take your lower lip and pull it up over your forehead.
Yeah,
that's childbirth.
I do recall that. I remember that.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember that skit. That's ouch.
So it's just, it is what it is, and there will come a day when we won't be in these bodies. We won't have to feel pain. We won't have to feel the things we're feeling now. Some people, there was one guy who was really upset at George W. Bush because now and they called it a cocoon of comfort. I thought that was really great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of presidents. I'm not just singling him out. It's just because what the guy said afterwards. A lot of these presidents come in, they make all these promises, and they barely do anything. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Just like cops, some white cops are good, some white cops are bad. Some black people are good, some black people are bad. There's good and bad in everything. Mm-hmm. But there's no blanket one solution to everything, except when we start talking about God. There is one solution to everything. It doesn't take away all of your pain. It doesn't take away all of your problems. It doesn't take away all of the bad things that happens. But what it does is it kind of turns you into a magician. All of a sudden because God says, I'm able to make all things work together for good for those who love me and are called according to my purposes. So there are people who are called according to his purposes. He's going to make every single thing work out for good.
Yeah.
And many are called and few are chosen. So I'm not saying only the chosen. See, people think that means only the chosen. Many are called. God wants everybody to come to repentance and no one to die. That's his wish. And it doesn't have to be churchy. It doesn't have to be,
oh, praise the Lord, brothers and sisters, for this is the day the Lord hath made, and we shall rejoice within it.
Yeah.
For I say that the free gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ. And here's how to get your free gift. Just send me $300,000 to Reverend Jim Johnson.
Yeah.
And you may say, Reverend Jim Johnson, I don't have $300,000. Yes. But for every gift of over $100, you'll receive this beautiful plastic replica of Jesus on the Cross, Lamb of God series.
Oh my gosh. I'm having a PTSD of 1986. Seriously, that was a bad time for televangelists, and I remember that vividly.
I actually got to tell that story on TVN.
Oh, how did that go over?
It was the 6th most requested episode.
Oh, I need to watch that. You told me about. That's right. You told me about that.
This is why I can tell people why I like being in Dio and speaking to churches, because there was a guy who had a gun to his head. He was flipping through the channels, and he said, God, give me a sign. And boom, what is Craig Goldy from Dio doing on the Christian channel? I was making fun of TV preachers. This is that's word for word.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I'm sick and tired of these TV preachers that come on and say, praise the Lord, brothers and sisters, for this is the day the Lord hath made, and we shall rejoice within it. And the free gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ. And how do you get that free gift? Just send me $300,000 to Reverend Jim Johnson. You may say, Reverend Jim Johnson, I don't have $300,000. Yes, but for every gift of over $100, you'll receive this beautiful plastic replica of the handcrafted Jesus on the Cross, Lamb of God series. Wow. Doesn't it sound just like him?
Yeah, it does.
And he was like, oh my God, he's making fun of TV preachers on the TV preacher program. He set the gun down. He put the gun down and got a hold of me, and we became really good friends for a long time. And we were actually, at one time, he was in the opening band of the band I was playing in. We got to connect in that way.
Wow. Well, speaking of that.
Sorry.
No. What were you going to say?
I got a letter from a guy from prison who made a similar deal.
That's
great. He said he just couldn't handle the next 7 years. I still have the letter with me. And he made a deal. He said, God, if he answers me, I'll stick it out. I didn't know that part. So I get this letter of this guy saying he's in jail. He's a big fan of Ronnie and a big fan of mine. And, could you please, would it be too much to ask for you to just kind of write me a letter back so I have something to look forward to? So I wrote him back. And I never heard anything since. One day, I'm telling you, almost 7 years to the day, Me and Ronnie finished the concert. We're on our way to the meet and greet. This guy and his wife come up. The wife is just crying. And he goes, dude, I'm that guy. I'm thinking, me and Ronnie are looking at each other like, what? He's, dude, I am that guy. And Ronnie looks over at me and goes, okay, Goldy, go do your thing. I show up at the meet and greet in a few minutes. You know? This guy proceeds to tell me that he's the guy that wrote me that letter. And then he tells me about the deal he made with God.
That's cool. Wow. I love your story, your faith story too, and the fact that God stayed with you through the whole thing. And it's been good for you. So you're thinking, you said this to me before, you're in the fourth quarter of your life.
Yes.
What are your plans musically? What are your plans lifestyle wise? What are your goals for what you want to do in the next 20 years?
Well, what I want to do is I'm in a fourth quarter win. I mean, every football game, American football game, is won in the fourth quarter unless they go into extra quarters, you know, overtime or whatever it's called. But I'm sick and tired of all these new programs coming out where they'll show you for a certain amount of money you can get all your songs played on the radio. They'll get all your songs on a platform and you'll get 100% of your royalties. If you do this, you know, you'll get, you know, in contact with a record company. Taxi actually stole that idea from me when I was teaching in college. I was actually certified by the state of California to teach the music industry and songwriting at college level. And then later the educators approved my program and my curriculum that I wrote myself to become part of the bachelor's degree program.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I know what I'm talking about because of my past failures. And I know what it takes to make certain things happen. How do you make a conversation materialize into a global success? I watched Ronnie and Wendy do it time after time after time, you know, and learned that there's there's a way to manipulate the intangibles. It's just somebody has to show you, you know. Yeah, okay, so great. So you're going to get all, you know, you have an opportunity to get all your songs on the radio. You have an opportunity to get a record company, yeah, or a booking agent, or a manager, or all the music platforms. So you have the same opportunity that, let's say, Taylor Swift has at your fingertips. That's great. But what they don't tell you is how to write a hit song. How do you get 500,000 to 1 million people to focus in on one artist and one song?
Okay, let me interrupt you on that because I want to stay focused with the things I got to remember to ask you. Your resume is perfect for what you just said. And I'll carry that over to the Dream Evil album. But first off, you're offering still today, I mean, people can get in touch with you and you're giving lessons or direction in the music industry as far as how they can break through younger people and older people for that matter. But are you giving guitar lessons also? Is that available? I mean, I guess it is.
What I'm doing is I finally got approved by the IRS for my own 501c3. So I have my own nonprofit organization. So now I'm going to start getting it going to where it's going to have its own website in its own way, you know, to get donations from the people that I know who have a boatload of money, you know, because I want to help other people. I want to help people. You know, I was homeless once, you know. I want to be able to help people at wherever they're at. And I want to be able to do it for free. Like the guy who created the polio vaccine. He gave the patent back to the people. He could have been a multi-billionaire, but instead of keeping the patent to the polio vaccine to himself, he gave it to the public. It became a public. It was owned by the public.
Right on.
In a very similar way, because there's a lot of problems going on right now, and everybody wants to get paid. I'll show you this and I'll show you that if you pay, but you got to pay me. You got to pay me. You know, yeah, I'm going to be doing lessons and Skype lessons and stuff. You know, I'm not going to do everything for free, but I am going to be doing a lot of lessons and Skype lessons and teaching people how to write hit songs and teaching people how to manipulate the intangibles and how to, because no matter how much the world has changed, this is the problem that people seem to face, is that when they see a guy like me, they're like, okay, well, the world is different than it was than when you first broke in, and how you broke in, and how you're doing things, and how you did things. That is very true. I have to do the same things that you guys got to do now. But the one thing that I know how to do that isn't shared is, number one, the process that's involved in creating music that pierces the soul and pierces the heart to the point where that person is unable to contain themselves and shouts out something that we can't say now.
Right.
And then,
by golly.
And then afterwards refuses to live their life without that music and are willing to buy that music. Willing to buy that music, refuse to live without that music, can no longer contain themselves on how great that music is. There's a process that's involved in that, and that process is still the same, and it always will be until we become cyborgs. Then I don't know what's going to happen. Right. But until we become cyborgs, that process is going to be the same. And nobody shares that because it's still that same thing about they don't want to create their own competition. Mm-hmm. How do you become unique? How do you develop your own style? There's a process involved, and it can be very tedious, but it will guarantee you that outcome. Now, I'm not saying that, and I'm giving it away for free. This is not a commercial for you to set me up to, sell my book or to sell my program or to sell my things. This is for free. Just got to ask. And it's all built on sound principles. In fact, I've told you this one thing, and you're kind of messing around with it now, right. And you can kind of see where I'm headed with this.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying that everybody's going to be the next Eddie Van Halen, but it works for drummers, bass players, keyboard players, singers. How to become unique, how to develop your own style, how to write a hit song. Once you get that information, you can take it to anywhere you want to go. But it took me years to figure this out, and it was only because of my drive to better myself and get somewhere that I have never been before. And it took me places that I'd never been before. Mm-hmm. But I was able to do the things that other people that were doing that I wasn't able to do. And so now I want to share that, because no matter how many programs you have that'll get you on the radio or get you in the front of a record company or get you all on the platforms all over the world, you can be in the best situation that you possibly can. And you have to have a song. You have to have songs. You have to have a sound. Otherwise, LaToya Jackson would be the biggest star on the planet, because she has all the connections that anybody could ever ask for in the entertainment industry, but she's just not talented in that way.
Right, she doesn't have the song. Yeah.
And everybody deserves to operate at their fullest potential and be satisfied with their lives, and that's the key. Are you operating at your fullest potential, and are you satisfied with your lives? How many people can say that and mean it? I'm telling you, 90 to 95% of all my wishes and all my dreams have come true. I can say that. And because I know it, because I lived it. It's like being the Forrest Gump of heavy metal. People often say, I think somewhere in that movie, somebody says, there's no way that you could have done all that on that high level all in one lifetime.
Speaking of that, have you ever heard the term 6 degrees of separation with?
Yes.
Okay. Bacon. Yeah. Okay. Well, ego rub incoming. Get ready. I've been saying this for a month now. Craig Goldy. I say 2 degrees of separation with Craig Goldy. Name somebody. Name any metal artist out there. Any rock artist. Name one. I'll put you on the spot, Craig. No pressure.
Metallica.
Okay. Bass player is Robert. He played with Ozzy, right? Rudy Sarzo played with Ozzy.
for us. They opened for us. The Monsters of Rock.
I mean, there's 100 different ties with that. Ozzy, Sabbath. I mean, but it all comes back to Craig Goldy.
Bon Jovi. I never thought of that before.
It's a new game I came up with. 2 Degrees. I do 2 Degrees.
Wasp. I'm looking at a Wasp, Cinderella, Anthrax, Metallica, Bon Jovi, Iron Maiden, Motorhead, Scorpions.
Slow down. I can answer all of those.
Pink Floyd,
Iron Maiden. On We're Stars, you played guitar right next to them on that. Okay, next.
Well, me and Nico McBrain are friends. In fact, one of my friends' wife is Iron Maiden's is their favorite band. So for her birthday, I actually contacted Nico, and he got them backstage passes.
Oh, wow.
He went to San Diego. Yeah.
Gosh, great band. That is a good band right there.
It's not to grow a third arm to pat myself on the back with. This is a really cool. If that ain't God, I don't know what is, because I'm able to help people in a way that nobody else is willing to. Not that they can't. It's just that they're not willing to.
Yeah.
With it, it's great to have all these people like for instance the Rudy, they call him Rudy, but Rudolph Schenker, when he was in, when we were touring with them, there was a time when I was in my own band and we were rehearsing in the same rehearsal place. I was using a little combo that was no higher than my knee, but the engineer we were using was fantastic. So it really is only one mic and one microphone, really, when it comes down to it, for the sound man. You can have a wall of stacks, and it's going to be great on stage, but it's still pretty much 1 or 2 microphones and 1 or 2 speakers. That's it. That's going through that PA system.
Yeah.
So I put a Marshall stack in front of it, so it looked like I was playing through a Marshall stack. And he comes over to me and he goes, "No, you must not do this. No, you must not do this," because I'm getting ready to play a gig. So he's doing a photo shoot, and he's got a wall of Marshall stacks. And he goes, "You come take these." Brings them back, So he told me to take as many as I wanted, so it would look impressive on stage, even though I was still using that little combo amp in the back, because those were all fake cabs and fake heads for the photo session. And he did me that big because of their love for Ronnie, and as long as I brought him back on time, he would let me do that. But I mean, Zakk Wylde, there's so many people, and a lot of it is because of their love for Ronnie.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with me until we become friends outside of that initial contact.
Yeah.
Because so many people loved Ronnie.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's interesting that you say that.
That's a fun game.
I think the only one is ZZ Top.
Give me time. I need time. You put me on the spot here. I'm going to go with Billy Gibbons, obviously. So you can't.
But Eddie Van Halen was influenced by ZZ Top. That's where.
Yeah, but I'm saying you shared. You shared
Van Halen.
What was that?
We did a concert with Van Halen in Texas Stadium, and Eddie sat on a tour on a tour case with a beer in his hand, watching my solo. I look over on the side of the stage, and he goes like this with his cheers, and I thought that was cool enough,
Yeah.
But then that night, I went back to the hotel room, and back in those days, it's when the little red light would blink when you had a message. So my little red light was blinking, so I called the front desk and said, "Do I have any messages?" And they started laughing. I thought, well, what's so funny about that? They go, "You got about 90. Well, apparently after that concert, he did an interview with MTV, and they asked him, if you had to retire as the guitar hero in the 21st century, who would take your place?
No. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I tried to get a hold of him just to thank him, but he's one of those guys where it's just like, it was just a one-off for him. That didn't mean anything to him.
Right. Wow. But it meant everything. That's the biggest compliment you can get.
It meant everything to me.
That's great. Gosh.
Totem Paul Guitars is located downtown Neosho, Missouri on the historic square. We offer new and used gear for the everyday musician. We buy, sell, and trade. We're only open on Fridays and Saturdays 10 to 5, but we can also be reached for an appointment. Come check us out. Our inventory is constantly changing, and you can also look us up on Reverb or eBay. 124 East Spring Street, downtown Neosho, Missouri. Totem Paul Guitars. We don't just sell guitars. We deliver happiness.
One more thing about Dream Evil, and that is, I don't know how many people actually know this, but for you, talk about being under pressure, because from what I remember you telling me that, you know, Vivian Campbell and Appice and Jimmy Bain pretty much wrote with Ronnie on Holy Diver and Last in Line. And then when you came aboard, you know, that was pretty fresh, you know, halfway through the tour, like you said. And then you guys are writing the album. Then it got to where pretty much you had to man the ship at that point. I mean, you were more involved in writing than the other guys.
Well, a lot of it was because they were still kind of hurting. They lost their friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I understand that, you know, and a lot of fans were bummed out about that too, you know, about me being the new guitar player. Anybody being the new guitar player would have bummed them out. Right. But especially me, because I came from Giuffria, as far as they know, who's this hair band, you know, guy coming along, ruining everything, you know. Mm. And so Ronnie told me, you know, that's what we do. Me and Jimmy get together first, and then we bring in Viv, and then we bring in the rest of the band. So while Jimmy and I are writing, you know, come up with as many ideas as you can, kid. So I did. So at first, you know, for about 2 or 3 weeks, I didn't hear from anybody. Then I get a phone call, and he goes, well, I guess Jimmy really isn't into this. You're up, kid. So by that time, I had accumulated 136 ideas. So when me and Ronnie got together, this was the first time that we were writing together for his band. We'd wrote together before, for Rough Cut, but this was the first time we were writing for his band. So we were dissecting each other's ideas, you know, because we didn't want it to sound like anything he'd ever done before. And if it was reminiscent, it was on purpose. Like Dream Evil was, you know, Ronnie looked at me and he goes, that's a riff. Now that's a riff. He goes, I've always wanted my own Man on the Silver Mountain, he said.
Yeah, right on, yeah.
But I had 136 ideas, so we started writing that way. Then we did bring in the band. And during the rehearsals, he would say, okay, now we need something here. Jimmy, you know, Claude, Vinny, you got anything? And they would, you know, we'd wait a little while. I go, I got an idea. And he goes, what? You know, then I present, you know, because I still had, out of 136 ideas, we've already got at least 9 going. Mm-hmm. You know, so I can't do the math off the top of my head, but that's still like 120 something ideas.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So he goes, great. And we used it. You know, then again, it would be, okay, we need something. It got to the point where he would go, okay, we need something. You know, don't say anything, Goldy. We need something here. Don't say anything, Goldy.
You're in the front of the class going, me.
Yeah, exactly. You know, teacher's pet, you know. And so after a while, then it was like, okay, what do you got? Okay, great. And we used it. And yeah, that went a long way, you know, but nothing against Jimmy, Claude, or Vinny, because Vinny, I mean, dear Lord, he's one of the best drummers in the world. And Ronnie told me once he plays musical. And I thought to myself, I'm glad I didn't say it out loud. Mm. What do you mean he plays musical? He doesn't have any notes, I thought to myself at the time. But when I was relying on him when the Resurrection Kings album came along, then when it went from demo to song, see, because the demo of the song was done without Vinny. Back in the day when we were doing Dream Evil, we were doing demos and then we would re-record them. So we would record the whole album at Ronnie's studio and then re-record them in the studio. So that way when we needed something, we weren't, you know, sitting around worrying about how much money we're spending by going, gee, what do we want next? So Vinny was part of the demos. So, I didn't really notice the difference between the demos and the album until we did the Resurrection Kings, when I heard the demo and then I heard his drums and how he built the song. It was a totally different song, and how the momentum. I mean, I knew how much drummers contributed, because when I memorized accidentally all of the drum parts, bass parts, keyboard parts, background vocals, and lyrics and melody lines of all the members of Deep Purple, because I listened to the album so much. Right. So I would automatically kind of sing the drum fill, because it was a very important part of the song. I never really understood it that way until Ronnie said he's musical. And when I saw the way he built the song, I was like, damn, I get it, And Jimmy, nobody plays bass like Jimmy Bain. There's just a certain feel and a certain sound. You can give him a J.C. Penney bass and a Kmart amp, and he'll sound the same.
That blows my mind, because I know he used those really thick, I guess, humbucker style, like a thicker double coil pickup. I don't even know if it was double coil, but they were really big pickups that he played. And he had a fat sound, like what you said.
Thick strings, too.
What? I'm sorry?
And thick strings. Mm. There was just something about him. I mean, I remember a time there was a song, I think it was Lord of the Last Day, where there was a hold. And we all had to count to 21 for the next down. So and Ronnie, God bless him, he'd come in and sing with us as a band. He wouldn't just let the first scratch vocal go and then let the rest of us were on our own. He would actually be in the room with us and sing with us every take,
Yeah.
And so now we're sitting around and there's that hold and we're all going 1, 2, 3, and the clicks going, we're like 18. 19, and there's Jimmy just walking around smoking a cigarette, just walking around like, and that was Ronnie's nickname for him in his song, is Jimmy Bob Bain and He Don't Care, Jimmy Bob Bain and He Don't Care, and he was just walking around like he didn't care. And I kid you not, beat 21 came down and he just went bang right down, and he wasn't counting. I know he wasn't counting.
Wow.
I saw him. I'm counting, watching him just smoking cigarettes. I think he even made a phone call on his set. I mean,
so he just felt it. He knew where that pocket was. Wow. Yeah. That's
great. Those guys were just, I mean, when Ronnie picked those guys for a reason, not just because Jimmy was in Rainbow with him and Vinny was in Sabbath with him, but there was a reason why they were in Rainbow and Sabbath.
Yeah.
And Viv was ferocious, man. That guy, they created a really good, I think I remember reading a comment the other day, is that people felt like maybe Holy Diver set the bar too high. Because even Last in Line, I love Last in Line and Sacred Heart, but by Sacred Heart the songs weren't that great because Ronnie knew that the guys weren't really giving it their all, and unfortunately I was there. I mean, I was at Ronnie's house all the time. I know what went down. And at the time, there was talk about them being like an equal share band by the third album, and it was, but they took it literally. Like, on the day of the third album, we're going to be a equal share band. He said around the third album, and he explained it to me one time. He goes, even though Jimmy and Vinny, are kind of stars already because of Rainbow and Black Sabbath, they're kind of there already. I mean, once everybody becomes about as famous as I am, that's when we should be an equal share. It should happen around the third album because those guys are so good. And on every record deal, you have a solo album option. And so if you pick up your solo album option, that tells the main guy, whoever it is, that you're now his equal because the record company has picked up your solo album option. That's all they had to do. And they didn't, because they knew they couldn't. And it all came down to this: money. There was no united front. It was Viv. But Vinny and Jimmy and Claude, Vinny says they all felt the same way Viv did. But where was the united stand? Where was the united front? Why didn't all those guys go together? Why wasn't it 4 people confronting Ronnie? Why was it just Viv? Why was it just right on, like he set his alarm clock and the alarm went off and said, okay, now it's time. You know, and he was very disrespectful to Ronnie on many occasions. You know, many times me and Ronnie would be at the bar together when I was still in Rough Cut. And he was perplexed because he didn't know what to do about Viv because Viv was being so disrespectful to him because he had such a sense of entitlement. You know, he didn't earn it. You know, they went from headliner to they went from opening band. They opened up for Aerosmith. I was there in Ventura when they opened up for Aerosmith, and Steven Tyler had to be carried onto the stage. Literally, I was backstage and saw them carry him on stage.
Wow.
And he got hit in the head by the bass player's headstock because
ouch.
He was going off on some weird tangent. The bass player kind of went bink, you know, like, come on, man. And then Steven Tyler sat there and like basically like yelled at the audience, you don't know what it's like, you know, all this stuff. It's like, and then Ronnie came on. It was like, you know, before all that, you know, they're all like, forget this, man. I want more Ronnie.
Yeah.
And so they went from opening act to headliner very quickly. And Viv didn't earn it like Jimmy and Vinny and Ronnie did.
Right.
And he had a sense of entitlement. He was a good guy. He really was. You know, a lot of fans will tell you that he was a really good guy. He was a really nice, and he was. He was a nice guy. He was a gentleman. You know, most of the time he was a gentleman to me, although he stole this from me.
Right. Yes.
Last in line. Because the drummer of Rough Cut was stealing the drum fills from Vinny Appice, and he was denying it. So they recorded it so that Vinny could say, "See, look, I told you." And they happened to caught my guitar solo, and I went to Ronnie and said, "Could you please tell Vivian not to do that?" And he said, "Let this one go, Goldy." I was like, "Oh,
that hurts. That hurts."
It was let this one go because it was good for him.
Yeah. Now that's because you were opening up. Rough Cut was opening up for Dio.
Yeah,
and like I told you,
the drummer of Rough Cut was stealing the drum fills from Vinny. So he was playing Vinny's drum fills before Vinny had a chance to play them. And I respect that. I respect Vinny saying, "Hey, dude, come up with your own fills. Don't use mine.
Right.
I have a chance to do it."
Yeah. So in retribution,
saying, I'm not doing it. So they recorded and proved it to him. But anyways, you know, that was the problem. Viv had a sense of entitlement and was very disrespectful to Ronnie from time to time. And I saw it once in a while too. And it hurt my heart a lot of times being at the bar with him, being so perplexed by that. A lot of people think it was Wendy's influence. It wasn't Wendy's influence. I've seen Ronnie go after Wendy like a ravening wolf.
Oh, okay.
They're apart, like coming after its cub. That had nothing to do with it. It was respect. And
interesting.
Ronnie was tired of being disrespected. Because I'll tell you what, if those guys had a choice between getting more money than they got a raise. Ronnie took a pay cut during Sacred Heart. There was so much money being spent. There was like 7 semi trucks that would go, because they had to bring their lighting crew. They had to bring the PA, because back in those days, the PAs that were in the Coliseums weren't big enough to handle the kind of stuff that they were doing and the sound that they were doing, because there was big drums and big bass and explosions and all sorts of stuff. So they had to hire a company to bring in to add to the existing PA system that's there, and add to the sound desk that's there, and add to the stage set, and add to the lighting, and they were adding all this. They were bringing all this stuff up. So the company, so when they be and complain about the lighting director getting more money than they got, it wasn't because of Ronnie. It was because of the company that Ronnie had to hire in order to get that PA system to sound the way it did and the lighting the way it did. That company set the salary for the lighting director, not Ronnie. And there was an 18-foot fire-breathing dragon. I'll bet you $1 million. If those guys were all equal share members, that would have never happened, because the money would have been more important. I guarantee you.
Yeah, it would have been
not only that, because I heard each and every one of them say it.
Gotcha.
They would have rather gotten the money than an 18-foot fire-breathing dragon. But Ronnie did it for the fans, and he didn't hike up the ticket prices. But that is still being talked to this day. I highly doubt that Vinny Appice's bank account is going to be talked about as much as the 18-foot fire-breathing dragon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Which is on that video right there.
Which is on that video.
Yeah.
They had to overdub the fire because the fire marshal came in.
Really?
Because once in a while, it did. It really worked. It was an actual fire-breathing dragon. Fire came out of its mouth. But the fire marshal had to come in during each and every sound check. Because to see and approve. If the fire marshal didn't approve of it, we couldn't use the fire. We'd have to just use the CO2.
Yeah.
So there were times when people were expecting a fire-breathing dragon, they didn't get it because the fire marshal of that city said no. Oh, it hurt bad.
Yeah.
So once in a while, that fire would come out like lava, and the stage was a big carpet. So I would be literally stamping out the fire with my foot while I'm trying to play rhythm at the same time. You know? People must have thought, what the hell is this guy doing? You know?
He's trying to keep time.
Yeah, well, he's not doing a good job of it. You know? On his foot anyways.
Oh, that's great. What was your favorite song off of Dream Evil?
Oh, that's a good question, because a lot of them, that's like saying, which would you rather have? And you can only pick one, inhale or exhale.
I never heard that.
I don't know, because it depends on my mood. I love the way the drums kick in on the intro of Dream Evil. That pum, 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 you know, then the keys and Sunset Superman, All the Fools Sailed Away. Before the silly keyboards come in on the second verse for When a Woman Cries.
Was it too? You know, yeah. When a woman cries. What got me on that song was the minute that Ronnie started with that. Oh, he just the way he sings. Oh, with so much growl in his voice, I could rewind that on cassette and listen to it 100 times.
No, and the way he says fire.
Yeah.
That's what started the whole heavy metal voice in the first place. Go back to the very first Rainbow record and listen to the out section of 16th Century Greensleeves. He says fire, you know, fire, higher, you know,
higher and fire.
Whoa! Hey, listen to it. That's when the heavy metal voice first entered this earth. That's when everybody tried to copy him. Just like when Eddie Van Halen came in and changed everything. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, Bruce Dickinson's trying to sound like that. You know, nothing against Bruce. We love Bruce. Yeah. But he wasn't singing like that before.
Okay.
A lot of singers weren't singing like that before.
Yeah.
It's like that oodly oodly thing that, you know, as soon as Eddie did that, all of a sudden everybody was doing it. That's why I'll never do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never did.
Speaking of that, going to the guitar, you were saying in Giuffria, the manager was trying to keep you from using the whammy bar?
Well, that was Rough Cut.
Rough Cut. Okay. Gotcha. What was it? I don't think you played it too much. You didn't use it that much. Why did they decide to do that?
Because they didn't want me to depend upon it.
Interesting.
And then what got me even more angry is that when they got a second guitarist, Chris Hager, love him, he's a great guy, he got to keep his wang bar.
Oh, that's not fair.
No, it wasn't, you know, but I understand it now, because there was a lot of things that I was forced to recreate that I would normally do on a tremolo bar that I couldn't without it.
Yeah, but what I love about that, Craig, is instead of you just going, okay, well, I guess I can't use that, you found a hack or a loophole and like, okay, well, I'll just invent a way to play the guitar and get that same sound, which you showed to me one night. And by the way, that really is starting to change a lot in the way I play.
Is it?
I'm accidentally doing it now.
You did it so quick. Most people don't. It was hard. It was harder for me to do it than it was for you to do it.
Well, that's because you showed it to me.
That's the point.
You're a good teacher.
I figured it out. I had to teach it to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to do that to the point where it's unnoticeable.
Right.
Took me forever. You did it the very first time.
Well, yeah. That's just a cool hack. And again, were you proud of yourself when you went back in to play with him and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and play and make the whammy sound without a tremolo bar? Well, that's great.
That's another time when two people start doing the same thing. I didn't know that Jake was doing this, but the delay too, like in Heaven and Hell, there was a couple of times when Ronnie would come with us in Rough Cut and sit in at the military bases. Mm-hmm. And we would do Heaven and Hell, and I don't have a delay pedal. So I have to go down, 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 down.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And because there was no YouTube back then, I didn't know Jake was doing that until I saw a YouTube thing. I think it was Bark at the Moon, when he was doing a beer.
That's right.
Like going, damn, I thought I can. When am I going to come up with something first? You know? But,
We got it. All right, I got this. Hey, everybody, this is Chris from the legendary Sub-Pod group, Steve and the other guys. I need to hijack this transmission for a second. I just wanted to let you know that you are cordially invited to join us in experiencing what we lovingly call middle ground. Please come join us for God, fellowship, ridiculous fun, and some heavy worship. Maybe you've got questions or want to change the direction of your life to a more spiritual and closer relationship with the one who loves you more than anyone in the universe. Come join us the second Saturday of every month at 7 p.m., 124 East Spring Street on the square in Neosho, Missouri. I'll now release you back to your regularly scheduled program, already in progress. Keep your soul hi-fi.
I heard you talking in an interview about how good Jake was, and that was really cool on your part. You were talking about like, oh man, he could do anything. But for you, when you saw him, it was a little bit frustrating because as a guitar player, you were like, how am I going to get to that level? And you said that was your woodshed moment. And I love that term because you hear a lot of guitar players and bands talk about woodshed moment, like, okay, I'm going in and this is going to change whether I'm going to be a great guitar player or I'm just going to be mediocre.
Yeah, it scared me. Actually, it scared me because I was at a point where I was learning Ritchie Blackmore solos, able to play them note for note. I had my own band. We were playing house parties and stuff, and we were starting to get a little local name. And a friend of mine told me about a band called Teaser you got to check out, and go check out the guitar player, Jake. So I went down to this place called Straight Ahead Sound, and that was it. He looked the part, he sounded the part, and people get this part misinterpreted, where I say that there wasn't a dang thing that Eddie Van Halen couldn't throw at him that he couldn't do. It doesn't mean that Jake was better than Eddie, or that Eddie didn't invent it and all that stuff. Okay, right. Everybody, I don't want to get a bunch of grief about this again.
Right.
It was part of my history. When I walked through those doors, that's what I saw. Mm-hmm. I saw when I heard Eddie Van Halen for the very first time, I was in that hospital bed, thanking God for the fact that my leg didn't get amputated, but worried still that there was a spot higher up that they were afraid of. If that didn't clear up, it would have to still be amputated. And Eruption came on the radio. And I didn't know what it looked like. I just knew what it sounded like. I was like, what? It sounded like he was putting his, I thought to myself, how is a guitar player putting his guitar through a keyboard? That's what I thought. But then how is he doing that? How is he putting a guitar through a keyboard? That's what I thought. And then it wasn't until later that I learned that it was this thing, because I was in the hospital. I was in there for a whole month. So everybody had a little bit of a head start on me when it came to that stuff. So when I got to Straight Ahead Sound, I think I was still on crutches. There he was. And it was like all the things that Eddie did, he was doing. I was like, how the heck did he figure that out? Because there wasn't any live. He must have gone and seen him live or something. I don't know. But he was pulling it off. And he had the hair, he had the look, he had the stance, he had the straight stage presence. It was just like, wow, And it scared me because I thought I'm at this point now where I'm going to be able to make a name for myself, and now I got to go back and start all over again.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow. So what did that look like? What did you do? I mean, how did you push yourself harder, or how did you develop more?
Well, quite honestly, I had to start learning some Eddie Van Halen stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to play a shuffle. It was really funny, that I'm the one.
Yeah.
So my drummer friend had to teach me how to play a shuffle, and there was all sorts of stuff that I didn't know about, that the other guys were doing, because I was teaching myself how to play guitar. And so there was a bunch of stuff that Eddie was doing that Blackmore wasn't doing. And so I thought, but it was cool. But still, it was the Blackmore stuff that called me. The Eddie Van Halen stuff was like ahead of me and was better than me. But Blackmore was ahead of me and better than me. But he called to me. It was like part of me. It felt like it was part of me.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out how to put these two worlds together, because obviously that's what the world accepts now. It's no longer that really cool breakdown part at the end of the Smoke on the Water solo that gets everybody. That's just like the coolest thing ever back then. So now it's like, how do I recreate that moment? How do I, now that Eddie Van Halen has basically done everything, what do I do? So that's where I came up with that, what I now call Stanley Jordan thing. I figured, well, what if I'm able to play a guitar like a piano? So I set it flat, and then I had to go, okay, I had to put a piece of tape on it. And then I would literally play it like a piano. It was all pull-offs and hammer-ons. It was none of this, none of the oodly, none, just because Eddie does it. He goes like this. He puts it on a little platform, and he does the same thing, but he still does the oodly thing, just opposite. But I was actually playing the guitar like a piano, except the pull-offs were the only difference. Hammer-on, pull-off. It was all hammer-ons, and then coming down, pull-off, 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 hammer-on, pull-off, pull-off. And I learned to play up and down the thing, and it took forever. And then, so by the time we got in Giuffria, God bless David Glenn Isley, he was willing to play a part in that, where he would sit on his knees and hold the guitar like a table. So he was my table. He was a human table. And I would come in and I would have a handkerchief and I would play the guitar like a piano. So we opened the first Deep Purple concert that way. So everybody knew us for Call to the Heart. The only reason why we got on that tour was because Richie Blackmore thought we sounded like Journey. There was going to be no guitar competition.
Ouch.
That's why we got that. That's why we got the gig. I couldn't understand, because when he did finally come to San Diego, and I was over all that stuff about the religion and going to concerts. I went. My dad stood in line during his lunch hour and got tickets to Rainbow at the Fox Theater back when Graham Bonnet was singing. So who did they have open? John Cougar Mellencamp. I'm thinking to myself, what? These guys do not belong. Now I understand why. So, but I didn't know that, and Richie didn't know that. Richie didn't know that he had the biggest Richie Blackmore fan in the world opening up for him. He had no idea what was coming.
Yeah.
So we do our set, and then at the same time, all of a sudden, the stage goes black, and Greg Giuffria had this little thing on him, and he was going Goldy, over his keyboard. That was the true vocoder back then. So there was this synthesized sound like Goldy, Goldy, and then here comes Dave, and he gets the thing set up and the guitar, and then all of a sudden this light shines brighter and brighter, and I'm standing there playing the guitar like a piano. And then I take the handkerchief off, pull it, and we kind of high five Dave. Dave runs off. I start doing the one-handed thing and doing all, some of the stuff that I was doing in that one on Philadelphia. Crowd went crazy. And at that night, we went to the bar, and there was Richie going, "Man, you're amazing. You guys are great." And I'm thinking, this is great. This is going to be great. There's Blackmore telling me he thinks I'm great, And then 3:00 in the morning that same night, our manager calls an emergency meeting because we got kicked off the tour.
Oh, gosh.
Now check this out, though. It's great. So they go, if Goldy doesn't do his solo, you guys can stay on the tour. All eyes on me, right? I'm like, okay, let's do it. You know what am I stupid?
Right.
You know? And then I couldn't have timed this if I tried. There was a break in between that and the Foreigner tour. So I normally would go visit my grandparents, and then after that go visit my parents, and then some of my local friends. We just happened to have the TV on MTV at that time. So there's my mom and my dad and my brother, all who thought, I mean, that just couldn't have been worse to me. Watching MTV, and all of a sudden MTV News comes up. Martha Quinn, bless her little heart, goes, Craig Goldy, lead guitar player of Giuffria, has got legendary guitarist Richie Blackmore shaking in his boots. There's more to come.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't have timed it. There's no way I could have timed that.
Yeah.
And they all looked at each other, and they all looked at me. And from that day forward, they were constantly calling me, going, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. You know, and I kept telling them, look, you know, let's start over, you know, because forgiveness is so powerful. And we got a chance to start over. I got a chance to have a close relationship with my mom and my dad and my brother, you know. And turns out they're pretty good people, you know. And it was great.
Yeah.
But I mean, I couldn't have timed it any better.
Yeah.
There's no way, you know, that there is. Those little things sometimes to me are. That's I look up. There's times when, you know, people they'll catch me looking up and saying thanks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ripper once said, "Did you just look up and say thanks to God?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Why?" I say this, and he goes, "Oh, I didn't even notice that. Yeah, okay, that is pretty cool." Then he goes, "Thanks, God." You know.
Right. It's not a coincidence. The new term I've heard is called a godcidence.
Godcidence. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a definite godcidence.
I think I told you one time we were sometimes we'd drive in a van, and we wouldn't have a tour bus, and so the tour manager was always driving. So I didn't think it was fair. So I said, "Why don't you go lay back?" You know, because I don't sleep anyways. I can't sleep on the bus or the van or whatever. Why don't you go get some sleep and I'll drive? You know, just pick a time where you know it's going to be one freeway for like 3 hours. And so that's what we did. And as we were entering onto that freeway, it started to rain, and then the rain turned into hail, and it was starting to get really scary because the hail was so hard and big and came down with such a pounding force that we thought that we were, you know, the windows are going to break, and you couldn't see ahead of you. You know, thank God for the people with their brake lights on, you know, and we were like going at like maybe half a mile an hour, and it was just raining. It was like, do we pull over and get pulverized by the hail, or do we just keep going and hope that, you know? So something reminded me that we're supposed to be able to ask God in those moments for help. And I knew if I said it out loud and it didn't happen, I'd look pretty foolish, but I didn't care because I was scared. And God bless, it was my bass player who was a student in my class, who ended up working with Yngwie Malmsteen and Quiet Riot, and then with us.
Yeah.
By the way, which was really cool. So
yeah.
So he's sitting next to me, and I go, oh, "Sorry, man, I'm not religious. I just got to say this, okay? So what I'm going to say out loud, you know, it's going to sound weird." He goes, "Okay." I said, "God, you said that if we're in this kind of trouble, that you could get us out. There was a time when Jesus calmed the storm, and I said that unless there's like an immediate emergency, like a drought, or somebody needs this water, or it's beyond our need, let it continue. But if it's happening and it can stop, please stop." And I kid you not, within seconds, it stopped, and the sun came out, and it was blue skies for as far as you could see. And the bass player looked at me, and he was like, "What just happened?" You know, it was, you know, now, yeah, it could have been a coincidence. But I mean,
No.
you couldn't see ahead of you. We didn't know what to do. And
Well,
I highly doubt that there was a sharp line between total disaster and total freedom.
Right. I
Total
used to believe
disaster
in that.
and total safety.
I used to believe that God, the coincidence thing is like, well, it could have just been a coincidence, but if God is all knowing, all powerful, all everywhere at all the same time and knows everything, then why would he allow that coincidence to happen at that time? Except for
Most people focus on the why would he allow the hailstorm?
well, because they would rather not believe. They don't want to believe. That's what that comes down to.
Yeah, I just thought, wow, this it works, and there's a few times I've done that since, and it's worked, and there's times when like I said, almost 95% of all my wishes and dreams have literally come true.
Yeah.
And if I sat down, we think this has been going on long. If I sat down and listed them all, I don't think you would doubt, but most people would doubt. Because but Oxford University did a study on coincidences, and they said that it's after a certain amount of coincidences, it becomes a mathematical impossibility that it is simply a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
So, according to Oxford University, yes, we all believe in coincidences. I believe in coincidences. I mean, I know that God knows everything, so I don't mean that God doesn't know what He's doing, or he had to go to the bathroom and told the angels to take over, or he's scratching his head going, what am I going to do about this? I know that, but I don't think there's any problem with a coincidence once in a while, because you're still on his chess table.
Yeah.
Maybe the opposition made a move and he just hasn't made his move yet. And maybe it seems like a coincidence at the time, but it's all, but if it's all predestined, then where's our free will? There's that thing,
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like that, it's a lot like a board game. There's rules to the board game. Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. However, it's not always the same person who's going to win and going to lose. If you got a family of 5 and you play that game enough, everybody's going to win and everybody's going to lose.
I've given it enough times, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And people can understand that, but what if you knew the person who created the game chess and created the rules and made those images look like they did and came up with the reason why those chess pieces move the way they move? Only certain chess pieces move a certain way. Even in checkers, there's a couple of things where you can't go there. You can't do that. Not until you get king. King me. Why do you think they say king me?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Now you can go anywhere you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot like that. It's a lot like that. It's just we know the owner and the creator of the game. That gives us an unequaled advantage. We still face what seems to be insurmountable odds, but that's when we know it's God, because there's times when I know for a fact I didn't do this. It was way beyond my ability. It was way beyond my capability, and something happened that I couldn't make happen. And it's like, and I know that that's not enough to convince people. I'm not really on this to try to convince people to believe in God.
Yeah, I got you.
But you and I have many similar beliefs, and it's nice that we can talk about it because it is a part of me. So if people want to know about me, this is going to be something that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Looking for a place to connect, grow, and be inspired? Discover Co-Lift, a faith-based gathering where everyone is welcome.
Join us every Friday night at 7 p.m. at the Oaks Building, located at 321 South Hamilton Street in Neosho.
Experience the joy of live worship music as we come together to praise and lift each other up.
Dive into engaging scriptural verses, heartfelt testimonies, and inspiring Bible studies that strengthen your faith and community.
Share your prayer requests and let us lift you up in prayer as a supportive group.
And don't forget the kids. Our children's class provides fun, faith-filled activities centered around the Bible and Jesus.
At Co-Lift, We also seek opportunities to help our community by showing the love of Jesus. Together, we make a difference through acts of service and compassion.
Co-Live meets every Friday at 7 p.m. at the Oaks Building in Neosho, where everyone is welcome. Co-Live is more than a meeting, it's a family.
Come for the community, stay for the faith. See you this Friday at Co-Live.
For more details, visit our Co-Live Facebook page to find out what activities this week's meeting will entail.
Co-Live, where faith,
Friendship,
and community come together.
Oh, is that you are planning to come here in October
Yes,
to
sir.
Neosho, Missouri, which is going to be great. So you'll be doing a guitar clinic. That will
Yep.
be on the 11th. That's a Friday night. I believe that's
Yep.
right. Okay. I don't have those days in front of me. That's a Friday night. Is a Friday night? I don't know what time it's going to be exactly. I don't have that down yet, but the 11th is October, is Friday
I'll
night.
be coming in on the 10th on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the clinic on Friday. Yeah, and then I'm getting an opportunity to go with you for Middle Ground, which is going to be
Which I'm really excited about that. That's just, the timing was perfect. That might have not have been a coincidence. That might have been me just trying to time that to where you were going to be here at the same time so you could maybe get on stage with us. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool for me. It's all about me. So,
well, I'm telling you, no, really, I'm telling you, you got the look, you've got the talent, you've got the attitude, you've got the heart, you've got the soul, you know how to play, you know how to write. You're my special project on top of it all. I can't wait to see what happens with you, because you're not fooling yourself. You are who you suspected you have been all along. Now it's time to just make it happen. Because there's certain information you would have been able to do this all on your own had you had the kind of people like I had, like Ronnie and Wendy did, and some of the managers of Giuffria. The one guy was a record promoter, one guy was a radio promoter. Wendy and Ronnie showed me behind the curtain. They showed me the behind the scenes stuff. Their accountant showed me behind the scenes stuff. Their attorney showed me behind the scenes stuff. So when you get to that caliber and you see behind the scenes and they explain it to you, not just a chance to see it and try to figure it out for yourself, but they take the time to actually, like they would bring me into record company meetings, just me. And they just told me, just watch what happens. We'll talk about it later. So they knew that I was supposed to just sit there and observe, and they didn't explain it to me later. I learned so much behind the scenes stuff because I had somebody who cared about me enough to share that inside information with me. That's why it hurts me so much, and why I'm so on fire to try to share this stuff, because this is the kind of stuff that literally does change your life. It changes your path completely when you know this kind of stuff, regardless of how the world has changed. There's information that you glean from out of all this that is still extremely, if not more so, parallel and paramount for today's world. People think that radio doesn't matter and record companies don't matter, but when you create music to sell for a profit, that in itself is the music industry. Whether you want to be a part of the music industry or not, and you want to go it alone and you want to market yourself on the internet, that's great, and it's very viable. Some people have made millions of dollars that way. However, they still have to know certain things that other people don't know if they're going to make millions of dollars that way. Some people do it accidentally, but they can't ever repeat it again because they didn't know what the hell they did. Right. But the people who continually do it know what they did.
Right. Your resume is exactly the reason that you are perfect for the job. Plus, you have a heart to teach. I can tell that. I mean, you get around some people, they just love to teach. Everything's a lesson. And with you, and it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. People get something from that. So you have a heart to be a great teacher, on top of the fact that you've got the experience to back it all up. So,
well, I just think it's because I don't like injustice. I think it's an extreme. We as musicians as a whole have perpetrated an extreme injustice on the unknown musicians. the music industry as a whole has perpetrated an extreme injustice upon the up-and-coming artists. And they're doing it today. They're still doing it.
Yeah.
And that really makes me angry. I'm a good teacher, yes, but I want to see justice served. There's people out there suffering needlessly. I want to end their suffering. There's people out there who've got a fire inside themselves so burning so brightly that you can feel it coming off of them like an incinerator. That was me. But I somehow got a hold of people who cared enough about me to help me in some way, shape, or form. And then somehow I got into the Ronnie James Dio world, who then helped me even further. And so I want to be able to do that for other people. I shouldn't be able to just keep this to myself and then sell a book someday.
Right.
That would be I would be part of the injustice being perpetrated upon the up and coming, upon the people who are extremely gifted like you. You're my brother. I love you like a brother. And my brother is living in an unjust world, and so I'm taking it upon myself. And I never ask you for money. You always,
Right.
I never asked you for a dime.
I know, you're right. You're right. Which I think is sorry, I don't want to mess up your rhythm there, but I think that's you need to be compensated for the stuff you've shown me. I'm like, mind blown. I've had several, I try to learn from every teacher I can. Every person that comes in the store that just blows me away, I'll steal a lick when I can. But the things that I've learned from you, I'm like, they're down to my level for one. I've had other teachers that it's going to take me years to absorb what you just said. With you, you speak to my level. And at the same time, it just blows my mind at how, well, that just makes sense. That makes perfect sense. I don't know how you absorbed it and learned it, but.
Right. And then at the same time gives you obtainable goals to obtain it for yourself.
Right. Right.
And then on top of it all, it's not the Craig Goldy method anymore. It's just how things work, how I discovered how things work. And it's just me explaining it to you. So it's not the Craig Goldy method. It's I'm the one who happens to be the one to share what's going on behind the curtain that then becomes the Shane method.
Right. I think that what we should probably plug here is if somebody does want to start getting guitar lessons or discuss with you about the music industry and a plan going forward to promote their band or their music, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, let's do this. Let's do both. My first and foremost, to answer your question, my email is just craiggoldy@hotmail.com. All one word, all lowercase. CRAIGGOLDY@hotmail.com. HOTMAIL. And then let's do a thing where I learned this from the band Budgie. On Thursday when I get in, let's go to dinner and let's invite some people up to 10 people maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, no, 7. Up to 7 people.
No, 7, wife and you and me. Yeah.
That makes sense. So we'll get a table for 10. We'll invite 7 people to come to dinner, but they don't even have to order food. They could just sit there and drink water, but pick my brain. Use that time, to pick my brain, because we'll be there for hours, and then let's do some lessons in the morning on Friday morning, starting at 10. We'll do an hour lesson. This will be the only time that I would, this would be where we charge money, because most musicians who never even stepped on a headlining stage charge $100 an hour.
Right.
So we'll have 6 openings maybe, right? Don't you think about 6 openings in the morning for the clinic?
Yeah.
For $100 a pop, but that gets them into the clinic. So it doesn't end there. It's not like they get $100 and then pay for the clinic and then off, because at the end of the clinic is going to be a lot of time being spent talking, hanging out, taking pictures, explaining stuff. I'll be there till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't care how long it takes. You may have to give me the keys to lock up. I don't, but it doesn't stop there. It's just something that, because the clinic will also be, there's a few things. There's a myth to how to play fast. that I don't think people know. And I'll show it to you, and then you can tell me what you think of it. And it's really a myth, but once it's not as much in your left hand as you think. It is a combination between your left and your right hand and double picking. But there's a thing to it that it actually it's kind of like an illusion. It has nothing to do with delay or anything like that. But when you do it, it sounds just like Yngwie Malmsteen's Fastness or
Michelangelo.
Aldi Meola's Fastness. It's exactly the same. They just won't tell you that. They want to think that they're, operating beyond the human capabilities. Neither one of those guys are going to tell you that, oh yeah, it's actually kind of an illusion. They wouldn't tell you. There's for those people, vowel sounds, because we all know how to create consonants from the very beginning. An open D string is just if you mute it, those are consonants. If you write out a complete sentences of nothing but consonants without any vowels, and then hand it to somebody and say, "What am I trying to say?" They're gonna say, "I don't know." Music is communication. I learned that if you go back and listen, there's a certain era where Blackmore is using vowel sounds more than ever. Eddie Van Halen, every great guitar player uses vowel sounds, especially George Lynch. That guy can make a vowel sound like a wah-wah pedal.
Yeah, that's right. I have heard that before.
I mean, that's how you communicate. Learning how to create vowel sounds is not cool. It's necessary if you want to be able to communicate. And then there's certain people who might want some songwriting tips who are songwriters. There's some very simple things that when the difference between chords and melody line, where once you establish a chord progression and a melody line, then you keep the melody, you preserve the melody line and change the chords according to your knowledge of what chords and what notes in those chords will also belong to that note in that melody line. I'll show you that too later, and you'll tell me. But there's simple little things that will, in just that one thing, I guarantee you, will open up a whole entire different world. And I can also share the method about how to become unique and how to develop your own style. You have to be able to have some sort of multi-track recording unit at home. Not a lot of people do that, but there are a lot of inexpensive nowadays. You can get some, multi-recording units at home, software or whatever it is, or even if it's a physical 4-track or 8-track. There's ways to do it, and I'll show you how to do it. And it's based on sound principles. The first sound principle that it's based upon is this: what you listen to the most is what you improvise the most like. And so as you create this new method in your improvisations, the best of you comes forward, and you listen to those more often. And so what you listen to the most is what you improvise the most like. So it's like a big sifter. It sifts out everything that you play that sounds like somebody else and leaves you with only that which is you. And then it just like one grain of sand seems like it weighs nothing. After a while, you're going to have a 20-pound bag of grains of sand. And people are going to go, what the heck did you just play? What the hell was that? Show me how to do that. If I can have Richie Blackmore come to me and say, you have to show me how you do that, I can show you how to make somebody else do that. Come to you and say, you have to show me how you do that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, okay, my cheeks are hurting because I've been smiling the whole time because I'm happy and I'm excited. And is there anything else you want to talk about? Can you bring some CDs or some of your newer stuff?
Yeah, I'll try to, yeah.
Okay, and then that way we'll have it here. And but yeah, for everybody that's listening, you'll be here Thursday night. Thursday, yeah. And we'll go grab dinner, a select few of us, and you can just contact me and I'll get you set up, because that's the first come, first served. And then Friday, one-on-one lessons with Craig, which is amazing.
And then you'll get you and I, me and Shane will talk, and we'll pick the people, because it's going to come with my email, Skype, and cell phone number.
Okay.
Because those particular 6 people are going to be a particular type of 6 people. It's not going to be just sitting in a room and I'm going to show you a couple of chords and then talk about a couple of stories and then off you go. You're going to have my cell phone number, you're going to have my Skype, you're going to have my email, you're going to have, one-on-one. I'm going to need, we're going to need to know where you're at and how to get you where you want to go based on where you're at, and create a plan, and it's going to go far beyond just the one lesson. You're going to get probably like 4 or 5 months worth of stuff, for what you would pay for one lesson. So it's more, it's way, way, way more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. The stuff that I've learned has blown my mind. I'm so high. I'm excited about what it's going to do for my playing over the next year, because now it's kind of made me even more addicted to guitar. I'm excited about coming in and putting the solo down and going, what did I just do? Where did that come from?
Hey, you played something that you couldn't learn at first.
It's continuing to happen. And that's more challenging than anything, is trying to duplicate what I just did.
Yeah.
But it sounds cool. I have to learn it now. But how did I come up with that?
And I tell you, there will come a time when 24 hours in a day is not going to be enough time. Right?
Oh, wow. That's great. You're right. Totally. Well, Craig.
Ozark Business Systems, the area's oldest authorized Sharp multifunction printer dealer. We offer sales, leasing, and services on MFPs, scanners, and printers. Give Jared a call at 417-451-4440 or come by 122 East Spring Street, Neosho, Missouri, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Ozark Business Systems, your solution for all your printer needs.
Man, this has been fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I can stop recording now, I guess, but I'm just in case
there's in case we say something that you want to remember.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I love that cab. Look at that cab. Oh, it's so sexy hot.
There's something about Marshalls.
I guess I'm really, my amp right now is that EVH. I can't wait for you to play it and see if you like it. But
no, those when they were PV, they were like, I remember they were just noisy, but they were just the sound on those things was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, there was a question online, somebody on these stupid amplifier forums, and somebody said, somebody tell me what the best amp is for the money. I want a good metal tone. And please don't say EVH 5153. They're like, people are getting tired of that being the go-to. So that apparently is the new standard. Jakey Lee's playing that same amp. That's what he's playing right now.
Yeah.
So I have not spent the time to be a tone nerd, but I'm very happy with that. It's made it easy to dial in for me. But yeah, I love that. I love that cab. I'm so proud to have it. That's cool. I got the 2 Holy Divers and Dream Evil. I mean, that's great.
It'll be good to see it again.
Well, yeah, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, man, maybe I should pop the back. I'm going to pop the back and check the speakers and see the exact month that it was produced.
It needs a Warlock, not just any guitar.
I was even good. I had a 99 NJ series. It's not as cool as what you played, but I had traded it last weekend and I was going to set it right next to it, because that's what you were known for. There was who else played a Warlock? I mean,
well, then all of a sudden Poison and Motley Crue started playing Warlocks. But I was the first guy. That was the one thing that I could say I did first. Because
Motley Crue.
When I was in Giuffria, Greg said, go down to Guitar Center and pick out a guitar. So I was looking for, a Strat, because I was always playing Fender Strats up to that point. And I was walking down the hall to another room, and right at the top, above the doorway, was a purple Warlock. I looked up at that and I said, what the f is that? And he goes, oh, it's this new, I said, I want one of those. And then we went to NAMM, was shortly after that. And I was playing at the BC Rich booth. It was back in the days where you could sit down and just play and all of a sudden there'd be a crowd around you.
Yeah.
So Greg Giuffria and I went to the NAMM show and I sat down at the BC Rich booth with one of their Warlocks and just started playing. Just doing some of the stuff that I was, and all of a sudden this crowd gathered, and the owner of BC Rich, Bernie Rico, God bless his soul, looks over at Greg and goes, "We got to give this kid a guitar." And then from that day forward was Warlocks only.
How long did you play that purple?
I ended up. They didn't have a purple Warlock, so I ended up getting a white one, which was cool.
Yeah.
Didn't mind that.
So there's a white
black
one. There's a white one that you're playing in on that, and I thought there was a blue one too that you had.
Yes, blue and black. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would argue that Crew played theirs on Looks at Kills.
It was much later.
Video.
Poison and Motley Crue started using them, but that's when I stopped using them. Was when Poison and Motley Crue started using them exclusively.
But I don't remember that it was ever noteworthy. I mean, was it they used it, but was it actually? Did you ever see a video of them playing it? I remember a white one that. Yeah, I remember the white one that McMars played, but it was like on Looks at Kill, but it was only just like one video. You didn't see him tour with it. You saw him tour with like a Kramer, and I don't think I recall Poison either, but I wasn't really listening to him. So, but that was your staple, was the Warlock. Yeah. Well, Craig, thank you so much. Is there anything I'm trying to remember? Make sure I am not forgetting anything. And then of course,
if we do, just call me and we'll add to it. Okay, buddy. Thanks, man. Love you, man.
Totem Paul Radio, where we interview local and international legends, bringing you stories from the road, life experiences, and future artist endeavors. Totem Paul Radio.